There we go. I don't know what I expect every time I press a button. I expect there to be a fanfare and stuff, but that's not the case. Hello, and welcome to Too Long Didn't Read Tabletop RPGs. My name is Fiona. I use she, her pronouns, and I run a whole bunch of RPG systems on What Am I Rolling, which is a twice monthly RPG one-shot podcast. And yes, I know it's been a bit of a time. I was hoping to do more of these streams back in October. I managed to do one, and then life happened. Like, we had MCM, I've been organising a convention part of a thing at something called Dragon Meet, which is happening next Saturday with podcasts and stuff. I've had to do a lot of admin for live stuff, work, and then I had to get back on podcast recording and stuff. So I've not been able to do as much of these streams as well. And so as a result, I've actually not read that many RPGs, which kind of sucks, to be honest with you. It's actually, I've kind of got used to be like, oh, I will read an RPG a week, and so I've not done any of that. But I hope you are well, and thank you so much for tuning in to this live stream, or if you're watching the VOD back, it's quite funny. So I've got them here. I bought myself something called the Voice Deck, which does vocal warm-ups, and I did a couple of them before I went live, because I get very bad at, like, speaking. And there's loads of tongue twisters in there and stuff like that. And let me tell you, about 10 minutes ago, I could not speak at all. So the fact that I managed to say some words in some orders is a miracle, I think. But I hope you're doing well, and I hope you're excited about this particular RPG that I'm doing tonight. So a little bit of context and story behind this is that I am currently running a game of Kult Divinity Lost, a sponsored stream of it for my wonderful friends at RP Geeks. And I'll be honest, about a month ago I hadn't really heard of this game. I'd heard this is a controversial game, and I heard that it's like horror defined, and as someone who apparently is the queen of horror, in lots of quotation marks. I definitely do not call myself that, so don't be like, oh, she thinks herself a bit of a queen for this sort of thing. I was very intrigued, and I was delighted to have this opportunity by RP Geeks, because they'd seen my work that I'd done with the sponsored streams for the Alien stuff, and I've kind of just fallen in love with the whole thing. It's very much like how I found Solemn Veil, that sort of folklore horror RPG, which I just suddenly, it wasn't really about the mechanics per se for my like the very straightforward mechanics, and the same for Kult Divinity Lost, but the lore and the history and the sort of setting instantly really appeals to me as a storyteller. So what I thought I'd do, we've already done one session of Divinity Kult Divinity Lost for RP Geeks, and I was hoping to actually do like this kind of stream beforehand, just to get my head around sort of the game mechanics and stuff, but unfortunately didn't work out like that. So I thought I'd do one now, because might as well try and do one while something that I'm working on is currently relevant. Although I will say that this stream came about like maybe 2 hours ago. I was like, oh, I've got a bit of a free evening, and I don't want to go out, and I might as well do some reading. So yeah, so that's what we're going to do today. So let me switch over to small Fiona view. Do let me know in the chat if the audio is okay, by the way, because sometimes I really struggle to balance the music and my voice. Just let me know if I'm coming through okay. Oh, hello. Oh, sorry, Dead Toothbrush, because you've changed your image. Oh, thank you, Dead Toothbrush. You've changed your image. I just had that your face really like, hello. So that made me chuckle just seeing that there. I hope you're feeling better, Dan. I appreciate being sick is rubbish. Well, hopefully you'll enjoy me going through Kult Divinity Lost. So, for those of you who have been living under a rock, like myself, up until a month ago, and I appreciate, by the way, the text is very small on this web thing. I had to do that to fit in the whole bloody website, because the website is massive. It's one of those interactive ones that moves about and stuff, so as I scroll down you'll probably see it. But I'll read out what I can, and then I'll enhance, and then we'll go into the quick stuff. So this is the thing as well, I just want to quickly point out, there are many supplements to Kult Divinity Lost. There's a big core book, which there's several different alt versions of it, which I love, and I'm very tempted to maybe put on a Christmas wish list, perhaps. Today we're only going to look through the quick start that was sort of given from the Kickstarter backer, and maybe comparing it a little bit with the player's guide, as well as the player move reference sheet, and there was something else as well. And a player character sheet. Sorry, the name got out of my head then. So we're going to compare all those things, and majority of those things are available through the Kult resources page, which I will show as well. Starting to feel better now. Oh, and the music sounds nice and subtle. Well, actually, that was a funny thing as well. So apparently Kult Divinity Lost does have a soundtrack. I just can't find it. I don't think I can use it for a stream like this because I'm obviously not sponsored by them. But it was used for our RPG Geeks stream. And when I listened back to it, because obviously I couldn't hear this music when I was doing, being, the Weaver of Fates. I actually did pretty well considering the music came in at all the right points. So I was like, good on me for performing. Anyway, all that out of the way, let's talk about Kult Divinity Lost. So, Kult Divinity Lost is a reboot of the highly acclaimed and infamous contemporary horror role-playing game Kult, which was originally released in 1991. This, the fourth edition of Kult, features a completely new rule set and a setting updated to the present day. Escape your nightmares, strike bargains with demons, and try to stay alive in a world full of pain, torture, and death. The usual, The other thing I'd say, I knew I was going to forget this. I wrote it down to be like, Fiona, maybe mention the content warnings, and I completely forgotten. So, Kult Divinity Lost is a horror game, and it is known for sort of its philosophical depths as well as its controversial topics, and it doesn't really shy away from certain sensitive subjects. So, whilst we're not going to go through all of that today, obviously, because we're not running through a scenario or anything like that, I do want to just say right at the top of the stream, if you're in a place that you don't want such topics to be discussed, possibly read out, there usually is in the core book, it gives examples of what kind of horror subjects can come up. I might read them out, I might not, but I just wanted to say right at the top of the stream, there are some very mature content here. There's probably going to be some images which I'll go, oh no, at the last minute. But if that is the case, do take the time just to take yourself back from watching, maybe just listen if you want to, or feel free to just take care of yourself, because as I always say, you're more important than the rolls on the table or the story being told. I knew I was going to forget about saying that. Idiot. Oh, Fiona Horror Queen who doesn't care about anyone. Anyway, we live in a world where the sun has set. In Kult Divinity Lost, the world around us is a lie. Mankind is trapped in an illusion. We do not see the great citadels. We do not see the great citadels of Metropolis towering over our highest skyscrapers. We do not hear the screams from the forgotten cellar where hidden stairs take us to the inferno. We do not smell the blood and burnt flesh from those sacrificed to long forgotten gods. But some of us see glimpses from beyond the veil. We have this strange feeling that something is not right. The ramblings of a madman in the subway seems to carry a hidden message. And when thinking about it, our reclusive neighbour doesn't appear to be completely human when we pass in the hallway. By slowly discovering the truth about our prison, our captors, and our hidden pasts, we can finally awaken from our induced sleep and take control of our destiny. So, actually, that's one thing I was going to say, is that Seth Skorkowski, he has a really great series about reviewing, what Kult is, here's the main rules, how to create a character, all that sort of thing. He also goes through some of the scenarios as well. I'd highly recommend checking it out because he does, in one of his videos, he talks about the media's touchstones, that, if you wanted to sort of tell people what Kult Divinity Lost is to people, because obviously if you say a contemporary horror role-playing game, that doesn't really mean much. He compares it to The Matrix, this idea of obviously being imprisoned in a world that you see the illusion of. Constantine, with the sort of devils and demons and angels and celestials as well. Hellraiser, of course, all the Hellraisers. There was one other ones. The Master of Illusion, which is another Clive Barker film, and I watched a trailer for it, and my goodness, It looks really silly and really gory, and I can't wait to watch it at some point. But those are sort of the media touchstones, and there's obviously loads and loads of stuff like that as well. But if you wanted to get a sense of what we're sort of dealing with here in terms of like a horror role-playing game, those are sort of the main spokes, essentially. You know what? I'm going to zoom in a little bit because my eyes are rubbish, and I where is night mode? I miss night mode, so I'm going to just enhance a little bit. Or, hey, see what I mean? Stupid thing. Alright, de-hance a little bit. That'll do. Sure. All happening here. Let's see. Oh, there we go. There we are. Just mess with it a little bit. Oh, don't look at my dashboard. It's messy. Okay. Kult Divinity Lost has rules that support playing both prepared and unprepared stories. I think all my stories are unprepared. If you dare to tread the dark universe of Kult without any prior knowledge of what will happen before play, the rules will give you extensive tools for creation of creepy, bloody, and agonizing stories as they develop. If you want to prepare the stories before play, with pre-made characters, scenes, story arcs, plot twists, the tools for unprepared stories will be useful for inspiration, improvised events, and for making the universe seem real. The rules are based on the renown powered by the Apocalypse family. Hooray! We know that we've played Powered by the Apocalypse a lot on this show. So they share certain elements from the 2010 RPG Apocalypse World made by the great Vincent Baker and Mege Baker as well. There's two people there. Compared to Apocalypse World, the Game Master has a much firmer grip on the overall story, structure, and details, a key element in creating tension, horror, and dread. Many other areas are also customized and adapted to suit distinct horror the distinct horror setting of Kult Divinity Lost, such as campaign setup, monsters, equipment, combat, mental fatigue, always, injuries, advantages, disadvantages, and dark secrets. Yes, so this is really cool. We'll go into how to create a character, obviously, over the next 2 hours. But what I love is that you always start, you pick one of your archetypes, essentially, and then with that, there'll be obviously a drop-down menu, really, of like these things called dark secrets. I find that delicious. Oh, and we'll go on to it a little bit as well. The other thing to say as well, actually, let me go back to, sorry, Big Fiona here, hello. So as I said, I kind of have fallen quite deep into this game as well. And it does come with a lot of supplements, as I sort of said. One of the supplements, which again, off the top of my head, I can't remember the name of, and I know it will come up later. One of them is just about writing horror stories and writing horror campaigns. I think it's... I'll look it up in a second. And that's just 300 pages about how to run a good horror game. And I love stuff like that. I've been sort of like reading it on and off whilst I've been on the tube. But also, just because I've got them here, it comes with cards, like sort of playing aids essentially. So you've got a weapon deck where you can hand out cards to people. Here, the deck of traits. Advantages, disadvantages, and dark secrets. So again, it's very easy. You don't have to pass a book around to people or a PDF per se. You could give them like, oh, your character archetype is this. Okay, here are the 5 associated dark secrets you can choose from, and then work it out like that. And I've become a bigger fan of using cards in this way. Now, obviously, a little bit different when you're doing it online, but I find it really handy as a GM. To be like, once the characters have done their character creation and have their players, I can keep their cards and go, oh, so-and-so has this dark secret, and just have it as an easy reference. Just so I have it something in front of me, rather than on a screen somewhere, a nebulous thing where I go, I don't know, what was their dark secret? Oh, they had a disadvantage, I think, about greed, But here's the other thing I was going to quickly talk about. Now, I don't know. I don't know if I'm that sort of person, but I do like a good tarot card deck. I'm just looking up there, got 4... Yeah, I've got 4 different types of tarot card deck, and I now have a 5th one, which is the Kult Divinity Lost one. And it's very different. It's very different. Obviously, it's based similarly on the sort of minor arcana and major arcana stuff. But they have like... I'm trying to find an image I can show you about. But no, not only did the images, the artwork looks great. They've changed the name of the cards as well, and there is a PDF about how to use these cards in creating stories and doing fortune tellings, all that sort of thing. And this seems to be like a really big thing now in RPGs. So there you go. That's Kult, the tarot card deck, which I hope I will be able to use at some point. Because obviously with the book of many things that's coming out from D&D Beyond, Wizards of the Coast, and that's been delayed. And that we did a review of that for DM's Book Club recently, which should come out in the next couple of weeks. And that was about, how do we create stories? How can we use this deck of cards, this now 66 cards, to create different stories, and it inspires backgrounds. How does it inspire what happened before and what's going on now? Encounters. You can make an encounter deck full of monsters and all that sort of thing. So I'm a big fan of using something like a random card draw over, say, like randomly rolling tables, perhaps. I don't know, just feels something more tactile about it, more physical about it. But again, not for everyone. And of course, you do not need any of that stuff to play the game. I was just like, I can see it quite cheap on eBay. So that's what happens to me. Anyway, enough about that. So what I was saying, it was our strive when creating the rules have been to have rules that fade into the background. Rules are there to support the ongoing immersive story and not to break the flow or attention away from the story. Players are thereby able to play on their characters, whilst the game master uses the rules as a tool to advance and enhance the story. Very true. Now I will say on this particular website, cultdivinitylost.com, there's some videos here about again how you would play and the main mechanics essentially. But we're not going to look at those because you're here looking at me doing it, so don't look. But currently, Kult Divinity Lost is published by Helmsgast, and we've covered them before on this stream. A bit all over the place tonight. We did Troubleshooters, if people remember last time, and Troubleshooters was an interesting one. Overall, we did enjoy it. It just got a little bit too nitty-gritty about certain things. It definitely treated the players as like, well, they especially Troubleshooters is not about killing or hurting NPCs, but if the talk of death came up or murder or anything like that, you would punish the players for it. And I was like, you need to have this as a mechanic. That's what I meant. So you punish the players because they killed someone, because that's not in the spirit of the game. And I was like, well, you probably need to talk to your players about that, because that sounds like they're playing the wrong game. Other than that, Troubleshooters is really good, and they've got a few more bits and pieces as well, but Divinity Lost seems to be the other biggest one that they have. But yeah. So, and then finally, I just wanted to share, if you did want... Ooh, can I share it? No. There we go. So this is what I was talking to before about the resources. So, yeah, we've got, on the resource page for the Kult Divinity Lost, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 different eight different scenarios, some of which can be found in one of the supplements, but all of these ones are free to download. They're free to get on DriveThruRPG as well, and they cover lots of different sort of subject matters and lots of different kinds of stories. The one we're playing through currently at RP Geeks is this one, the Atrocity Exhibit, which I absolutely love. It's this idea of like, art, a tortured artist bringing, well, horrible things to life, essentially, and that's really cool. But there's other ones as well, and some of these ones have pre-made characters for them. Some of them you can create characters for them yourself. This one I really wanted to look into. So this quick play scenario called Senna is about a family preparing a 7-course dinner with their eldest son returning from Cuba with the last freedom flight. So again, set in a particular time there, so 1967 Miami. And it's really good. All of these scenarios, I've had a quick read through. Again, your mileage may vary with the horror aspects of them. It's really good. I've never thought about having like a scenario based around a family dinner, Yeah, really, really cool. Made it. Hello, Hazard Strikes. Hello, how are you doing? Hopefully this won't distract you too much from the gym. I hope you're doing well, my friend. The other thing I wanted to point out as well, something that I found really, really helpful when I was putting the stream together with RP Geeks, is that there is a reference sheet, a free reference sheet of player moves you can download for easy access in the game. Because I will say there is a lot to the core rulebook, and you'll see as well when we go into the quick start as well, there is a lot, and it's not necessarily the easiest to sort of pick out when you're desperately trying to come up with something, or you're role playing, and especially when the whole point of this system is to support ongoing narrative. So I would highly recommend printing out this reference sheet. It's only 2 pages back to front. There you got your character sheet. You got the rules for those tarot cards if you wanted. Some postcards because I don't know, you want to wish you were here. Hell, you know. And then there's a form fillable one as well. I would have liked, I think, something else for free. I can't remember what was the other, not for free, like a freely available download. I think there are, similar to the weapon deck, there are like reference cards as well. And I feel like those would have gone down quite well as a print on demand type thing as well. But there you go. So those are all those free resources that you can get easily, and I think you get a lot for it. Like, realistically, you only need to get, like, download one of these free play scenarios, download a character sheet, and the player moves. And yeah, some of these scenarios have pre-gens on them, so it's dead straightforward. Anyway, I've whittled on for 20 minutes. Let's get diving right into Kult Divinity Lost, shall we? And we'll talk about things. So what my plan is to do today, we're going to go through the quick start rules. Like I said, this is the alpha version 0 that came with the Kickstarter. And what I want to show through this is mostly the main game mechanics. And as you can't see it on screen, but there's 56 pages. We'll go through as much as we can. The other thing I might refer to on and off is the player's guide a little bit, which is roughly about 116 pages. This is to sort of help players who are creating characters and stuff, so we can look at those in a little bit more detail, because I don't think the quick start guide has them in detail. I think because they were still putting that stuff together, and also, you know, it's a quick start for a Kickstarter campaign, so less likely. But also, this is the player moves sheet as well, so we can always look at that as well. And I do have somewhere an empty player character sheet as well, so we can look at that and see that and compare and contrast and all that good stuff. So first of all, let's just enjoy the cover. Now this. So the other thing, I think I mentioned it a little bit. So with Kult, and I'm going to say this again, obviously viewer discretion is advised and stuff. There are some images in here which are well, we'll find out if the stream is on after we finish. There is some books you can buy of Kult which has more less censored art. So if you want to have that, feel free to go ahead. But often you have these sort of very sort of religious iconography, usually usually naked people with bits flying off them, etc. Obviously, I'll try and be as discreet as I can. If I see something that comes up, I'll be like, oh, no, let's try and scroll past that. So just giving you a heads up. So, you know, maybe this is not safe for work, the stream, or the gym if you're doing a class and it's down by your, I don't know, if you're doing Pilates or something. Anyway, but what a cracking image this is. It's, again, very iconic, this idea of sort of the angelic form with blood seeping off their dress, off their hands, with hooks and chains pulling them down. And I would say most of the imagery does have like a sort of like angelic halo type thing, which is it's just different. I love it. Absolutely love it. Let's dive in. So quickly enhance. How's that look on screen? That looks all right. Also, that's a huge lady. Oh, she's bleeding from her eyes. There we go. She does have fingers. She does have fingers. It's not nail polish that she's got on. There we go. So the first page, we've got credits for the design team stuff, but it says here, please read first. I will, my friend. One thing I already can see, it's double columned and it's tiny writing. Okay, but yeah, this particular quick start, you can see 2016 was when this came out. And I'm sure it's going to say this as well. This is not necessarily the final version of the rules. This is from the quick start for the campaign. So just bear in mind that it might not be exactly that. But, you know, I didn't want to be like, here is the 300-page rulebook. Read it at your leisure. So please read this. Dear Cultist, these rules are a condensed summary of the rules from Kult Divinity Lost Core Rulebook due in 2017. With this PDF, we wanted you, the curious, long-time fans, the twisted minds, and the lost souls to be able to pre-play, try the rules and create scenarios, and experience horrifying stories with your friends. Due to the condensed nature of this summary, almost no world information is presented. Okay, well, good, because that was the other thing I was going to say. Pronunciation is going to be out the window for this one. So it will be easier for old-timers to pick up and play quicker. For the rest of you who are new to the world of Kult, please check out the web for a general overview. Google it, is what we've been told. Please note we list this version of the Quick Start rules as alpha version 0.1. So a work in progress. That means the text has gone through a first pass from Swedish to English, but no further proofing has been done. Yada yada. Fine. The Quick Start rules do not show the final pages of the core rulebook. This is a unique summary made especially for the Quick Start booklet. So the final core rulebooks may look completely different. With that, there will be typos, Swinglish, phrasing, and strange formatting. Some rules may need clearer descriptions, etc. So please expect that. It's a work in progress. Yeah. Very much appreciate feedback from you. Well, it's already out now. It's been out. Hang on, 8 years. Fine. All right, let the torment commence. Oh yeah, you can also tell it goes. It says you can pre-order it from Modifius. Well, that's not them anymore, is it? All right, let's see the world of Kult. We live in a world where the sun has set. Us humans are trapped in an illusion which dulls our senses and binds our immortal souls in basic bodies made of flesh, fettered in time and space. The world we see around us is a false facade, hiding a truth more terrifying than we could ever imagine. Those of us who see beyond the veil find themselves face to face with a dreadful reality. Oppressive dark buildings, grim stone walls, doorways and stairwells leading to maze-like border worlds where ashen beings dwell in shadows. The abandoned home at the end of the street has a hidden entrance others cannot perceive, and if you pass through the blue portal, you end up in Metropolis, the Eternal City. The sharply dressed stranger is actually a mutilated, lacerated Nephite, who leaves bloody footprints in his wake. The fashion model is a soulless phantom, evoked into physical form by humanity's distorted subconscious beauty ideal. And that charming man from the dating website is an avatar of the Archon Tipfereth, the slave god of the principle of beauty, affirmation, and shallowness. Most of us humans don't suspect the truth, but we harbour a deep subconscious conviction that something is wrong. That is my general state of being, I'll be honest. A worry and restlessness that won't release its grip. To deaden our collective pain and confusion, we desperately search for some sort of purpose. Some deep dive into their jobs and work until stress consumes them, and then some. Others lose themselves in drugs and sex to forget about their existence in intoxication and ecstasy, or are prescribed, oh my word, psychopharmacological or talk therapy. Just say medication to deal with their cognitive dissonance. There are those who throw in with sex, cults, and religions to discover the freedom of being a cog in a big machine, to obey without thought or reflection. Internet tablets, espresso machines, selfie sticks, and other material things provide a sense of security and safety to come. Others manically dedicate themselves to positive thinking, a return to nature, correct and clean eating, and thinking and speaking. Even this is a trap. Our bodies are our prisons, and we forget we are beings of spirit, souls far mightier than what we could ever imagine. When our reality tears apart, our nightmares take physical shape. Long forgotten horrors of the deep are awoken, and entities which used to be our slaves and servants seek us out to take revenge. The terror originates with us, shaped by our psyches and our pasts. This is where the game begins. A crumbling illusion. Powers far outside our understanding follow ancient scripts and agenda. The thin membrane separating humanity from the divine, and how we allow ourselves to become enslaved out of the fear of the unknown. Ba, ba, ba. Oh, what a great image that is, huh? Playing Kult. In Kult stories, the protagonists are people being involved in or being pulled into events tied with their own pasts. All sins catch up to them and demand atonement. I'm going to do a tiny bit because it's a bit small. Childhood fears finally bubble up to the surface and take on physical forms. Terrors take shape based on what's inside of us. Whatever exists out there, we cannot perceive it without being reflected by it. Every human being has their own demons, their own purgatory. In these stories, the protagonists are forced to journey down into the abyss, perhaps even across the threshold of death itself, only to discover that there is no final destination, that death is only the beginning. The oracles and prophets try to catch our attention with graffiti carrying hidden meaning, in manic rambling screeds on conspiracy blogs, and by directly stopping us on the street and shouting truths in the form of spit-laden monologues in our faces. But we immediately turn our gaze down towards the smartphone screen's comforting light and keep walking as if nothing happened. In Kult stories, the main characters are forced to suddenly awaken from their slumber and, despite everything they thought they knew, realize their life is a lie. While the reality these characters have carefully constructed for themselves falls apart piece by piece, they will start to glimpse a darker reality through the cracks in the mortar. The illusion is starting to tear. In Kult stories, the characters will confront unthinkable horrors. Those who don't perish will be changed forever. Hate that word. They will make pacts with some entities to elude others. They will glimpse the truth that renders their past lives meaningless, and they will taste both the sweetness of victory and its rotten aftertaste. Gather in a group of 3 to 6 people to experience a dramatic horror story. One of the participants will take on the role of game master. No, I'd say no good title. No, like, cult leader or, I don't know, master of the illusion or something like that. They are responsible for leading the conversation and managing the story's scope. The remaining participants are the players, who use the game's rules to create player characters, acting as the protagonists in the story, one each. Before the game, the group will determine the guidelines for the story, when and where it's set, and any notable events the player characters have been a part of. So this is interesting. In the core book, and also in the supplement book, which talks about the horror contracts and stuff, and we've talked about it before, I think, but Powered by the Apocalypse, they have this really... one of the sort of cool things that they have that makes it a Powered by the Apocalypse game is that it will have like an outline, the tenets for the players and the tenets for the story weaver or for the game master, and it'll be like, here are 7 things you should always do as the game master. You know, be supportive of the players, make the world seem real, all that sort of thing. What's interesting in Kult is that rather than it being like the tenets of the game master, etc., it talks about this thing called the horror contract, and how basically, I think it might be one of the earlier RPGs. I say earlier, in the last 8 years, but it took a long time to be like, hey, so because for the content in our game, we're going to go through and like establish the horror contract and establish here are the main things we want, and you need to discuss it with your players. And depending on people's comfort levels at the session zeros or the lines and veils, you can take things away from the horror contract, add stuff into the horror contract, but every single game of Kult, whether it's a one-shot or a long-running campaign, you always have to talk about the horror contract with your players as part of session 0, and check in with your players every session to make sure that the elements that are in the horror contract are still there. So it's a little bit of a mixture of like, this is what we want to be part. It's basically a safety document, is what I say. And I will say the horror supplement, again, I'll have to find out what it's called in a second. it talks about all these different safety tools as well in quite a lot of detail. About, like, lines and veils, the check-in, the door is always open, the X card, and it lists like the pros and cons of each of them, saying like, well, the X card just basically just stops conversation right then and there, and you directly have an impact on it, whereas maybe like the traffic light system, you can easily sort of check in, say, okay, it looks like we've got lots of greens of it, so the scene's going to continue, or there's an orange, let's check in with that, and it's more of a conversational, immersive stuff. And I quite like that. I don't think I've seen any other book that talks about it in so much detail, and I think it makes sense for Kult, Divinity Lost, to talk about it in such detail because of the content in it. During the course of the game, the GM is tasked with describing the scenes and characters the player characters encounter, events which transpire in the story, and ask the players what their character is doing. That's all fine. The conversation might look like this. We're not going to read the example. You can read it in your own time. Read it by playing it. Although, maybe it'll be... Actually, you know what? Maybe it'll be good... now that I've said that, though, maybe it will give us a good taste of what you would expect in a Kult game. Because I think I've sort of talked around the subject a little bit. Maybe we should do that. So let's... Alright, fine. This is an example of how a conversation might go with the GM running a scenario with the players. So... The GM says, it's 8:20 in the evening, Saturday, November the 22nd, 2014. Heavy sleet falls on the streets of Stockholm, covered in brown mush, and people hurrying, almost running through the ice-cold downpour. John, you hang out. Hanging out? Oh, you're hanging out, yeah. Worst horror, cliffhangers. You're hanging out at the slab in Sergei Square, under the roofing by the subway entrances. You're waiting for Joanna, your contact at the Daily News, to show up. You decided on meeting here at 8, and it's now 20 minutes later, and Joanna is always punctual. I'm sure I've been here since a while before 8, just to make sure I wouldn't miss her, so I have been waiting a pretty long time. I'm probably pretty nervous considering the people pursuing me, so I'll give Joanna a call to see if she picks up. Sure, you call. A few rings later, Johanna's voicemail picks up and asks you to leave a message. Shit. Pretty sure something must have happened. What if they know I'm here? Out of habit, I start fiddling with the gun in my inside jacket pocket. You're aware there's a pretty large number of police on the square at this time on a Saturday night. Yes, exactly. I glance around nervously, stop messing with the gun. Where the hell is she? I think I'll wait another 10 minutes, and if she doesn't show, then I'm out of here. Yeah, okay. You stand there waiting. The minutes tick by impossibly slowly, whilst hundreds, maybe thousands of people run by you out onto the wet square towards the stairs leading to surrounding buildings. You're just about to get on your way when you spot Johanna. Oh, damn. I approach her quickly. Okay, as you start to walk, you notice a man behind her walks real close. Johanna's got the hood of her jacket up, but you can still see you can still spot heavy bruising on her face. Something is terribly wrong here. What do you do? Fuck. I don't know. Do you continue approaching her, or do you just stay out on the square? Okay, that was less interesting example than I thought it was going to be, but yeah. There you go. Rules, moves, and roles. The GM is responsible for applying and adjudicating the rules of the game. Before the game action starts, the rules help the GM prep the story and assist the players in creating their characters. And during the game, they help the GM tell the story and serve to introduce unexpected narrative twists, adjudicate outcomes, and determine the fallout of certain actions players take. All actions taken by NPCs happen as described, since the GM has already determined that makes sense. Yeah, so here's the thing. GMs, you don't have to roll. It's brilliant. Brilliant! No dice for me! They will glimpse the truths that render their past lives meaningless. They will taste... Oh, I've gone too far. I was like, what? There we go. Certain actions the PCs commonly want to take are described as moves in the rules, and they require the instructions in the rules whenever they're carried out. Frequently, this will involve the roll of 2 10-sided dice, so not 2d6, which you normally get for Power Buddy Pockets games. To do some doing some simple arithmetic, consult the move text for the outcomes depending on the role. So let's hop on over to this player reference sheet. So in total, there are 11 moves a player can do. We have avoid harm, endure injury, keep it together, act under pressure, engage in combat, influence other, see through the illusion, read a person, observe a situation, investigate, and help or hinder. Now, there are 10 attributes in the game. There's 3 passive ones, and then 7 active ones, which again we'll go into because we'll talk about it in the quick start as well. But what's interesting is that there's 10 characteristics, but there's 11 moves, and that's because this last one over here, help or hindering, it's slightly separate. Now, one thing I found interesting, Seth Skorkowski talks about it as well. So when you help or hinder another player's character's move, explain how you do it, and then you roll that attribute, which is going to be the same as they do it, fine. But you don't really add much to their roll, and this is the thing. So if the roll is you roll 2d10 plus whatever attribute is described in the move's description, and then you have levels of success. You have 15 plus, which is like a total success, 10 to 14, which is like a middling success, and anything below a 9 is a failure. And this is the thing with certainly help and hindering. When you roll, and you say you got like a full success, like you got 16 or something, and then you can modify their roll, the people's roll, by adding a +2. But then if they roll like really badly, then it's not really going to help at all. So one thing that Seth Skorkowski talked about is like if you're helping someone on a roll and you roll quite well, you automatically, that no matter what that person rolls, the friend rolls, their success level goes up by 1, and I think that makes it a much better one. Appreciate we've not even got to rolls yet, but I just wanted to just show that. So yeah, so ultimately, whenever a player is doing a move, the triggers, so this is like the trigger text at the top here, that's when the move will go into play. Now some of these moves, which is very typical of Powered by the Apocalypse, are very vague. But I believe the one that you're going to probably use the most is act under pressure. So when you do something risky, under time pressure, or try to avoid danger, the GM will explain what the consequences are for failure, and then you roll plus coolness. You have these other ones which are like engage in combat. Oh no, maybe it's not act under pressure. I think it's keep it together. So there's a mixture of these two, I think, are the most common rule ones as well. But yeah, so yeah, and then engage in combat is one thing, avoid harm is another thing. So I think ultimately it's about just choosing what is the best move for the job is. And I will say certainly the act under pressure or keep it together. It must be act under pressure. It gives a list of all the different kinds of triggers it could be. Is it trying to bluff your way into a club? Is it trying to chase after someone? All that sort of thing. Cool. Anyway, enough of that. So yeah, there's the example there of influence others. So when you influence an NPC through negotiation, argument, or from a position of power, roll plus charisma. And if it's a full success, 15 plus, she does what you ask. 10 to 14, she does what you ask, but the GM chooses one. So often when there's complications or failure, the GM gets to do a couple of cool moves. So she demands better compensation. A complication will arise at a future time. Consequences. And she gives them for a moment, but will change her mind later. And then, yeah, your attempt has unintended repercussions. The GM makes a hard or soft move. So yeah, so that's compared to players having those 11 player moves that they have. GMs can decide whether to make a hard or soft move. It describes soft moves as sort of like, you're not going to die from it, but it's definitely going to be a bit of an inconvenience, which you could sacrifice things for, essentially, and try and get out. It's more of a hindrance rather than an obstacle that you can't get past. And the hard move is pretty grim. One thing I'd say, I should have shown this earlier, I know, again, another thing I got on eBay was the GM screen. Let me go back to Big Fiona Cam for a second. So first of all, I wanted to show this. It is A4 standing up. It's not on its side per se. So it actually contains a lot of information. And here on one of the panels, sorry, I'll put it like that, and you can't see it at all, obviously. It talks about different kinds of game master moves that you can do. So instantly you've got stuff like separate the players, capture someone, take their stuff. But then you've got other ones here that are more like to do with like certain maybe certain settings. So you've got Metropolis moves there. So the memories of the past, a wondrous place. etc. And then right at the bottom here, it talks about the horror contract there. So, know your players, quality before quantity, build the atmosphere, stay in the scene, suggest rather than overwhelm. Really interesting one, that one. The inexplicable. Create a feeling of exposure. Dare to be unpleasant. I love that, gives you permission to do that. And then create interesting monsters. And then you've got a couple of the rules, a couple of the triggers on here as well. And then quick generation of characters, all that good stuff. And there's some unique moves as well. So anyway, I just thought it's really cool. It's very different to any other GM screens I've got, because they're usually like this. They're usually on their side like that, but this one's quite high up. Don't know why. Rocking that rulebook like like an 80s ghetto blaster. It's not the rulebook, it's a GM screen. But I like that a lot. Sadly, not as cool as an 80s ghetto blaster, unfortunately. It's just me. But yeah, so that actually seemed to be quite helpful when I was looking it through. Anyway, enough of Big Fiona. Back to Small Fiona. Serves me right for turning up late. Well, exactly. Yes. Grrr. No, it's good to have you here, Crafty Gobbo. Good to have you here. So, and yeah, for Crafty Gobbo's knowledge, so we're looking at Kult Divinity Lost. We're going through the quick start, and we've just got past. What did we get past? We've got past what the moves are, like in general, sort of what it is. So, we don't need to talk about this too much. If it is unclear a move's trigger applies, for example, a child PC argues that their imposing teacher who they have minimal leverage over... oh, I see, yeah. It's up to the GM to adjudicate which move fires or not. If the move does apply, it takes the action rolls with 2 10-sided dice and adds the characters. Right. Here we go. So, the result of 15 or greater is referred to as a complete success, and it means that the action takes place exactly how the player character intended. A result between 10 and 14 is referred to as a success with complications, and means the player character did what they set out to do, but there is a complicating factor, something unexpected, or a bit worse of an outcome than what the player character hoped for. And then a 9 or less is referred to as a failure, and means that the action has consequences that tend to be very bad for the player character. Now notice it doesn't say that the action completely fails. One thing, again, with a lot of Powered by the Apocalypse games in general, I think RPGs in general, is that we don't want to be stuck behind the door for 2 hours. Can't open the door for whatever reason. So the story has always moved forward, but there is really bad consequences. And I think that does require the GM to have a few hoops that they might have to jump through, but I quite like it that it doesn't say ultimately, like they failed the action, kind of, but maybe you can play around with some like hard moves perhaps, like, oh yeah, you get through the door, but on the other side, the trap goes off and you lose some stability as a result of it. All good stuff. Let's see. Moves are the basic mechanics in Kult rules and will be activated frequently. When PCs take actions to which no moves triggers applies, and the GM will decide what happens. Often they will do exactly the thing they intended to, but if they're unskilled, unequipped, in a bad situation, opposed by someone or something powerful, or just because the GM thinks it's more appropriate, the GM can give them an unexpected or unwanted outcome, or make a move themselves. The GM has moves as well, but these don't tend to have triggers. Instead, the GM will execute a move of their choice during certain dramatic moments. There's no dice rolling involved, and the events in the move transpires immediately and forever. These moves often result in obstacles or consequences in the story which PCs react to. The other thing, I don't think it's obvious, I don't know how right it is, because again, I briefly skimmed the rules before I started running Kult. I don't think there's advantage or disadvantage. Like, we have the help and hindering thing, but that's literally you add a couple of, add a bit of a modifier if you manage to do it onto the other person thing. I don't think you can roll 3d10 and take the highest or the lowest numbers. At least I've not come across that yet, which I like. I think that's quite fun. That it's, and maybe you don't have. No, you do have that in Powered by the Apocalypse games, so you have advantage in this. But no doubt, I'll move on to the next page and be like advantage and disadvantage. I'll be like, God damn it! The player characters are people portrayed by the players, around which the story revolves. In Archetypes character, you find 4 character templates and rules for customizing them. This chapter explores the rules utilized by player characters. So if you wanted to have a look at the full list, we've got this on the player's guide, and I discovered this button earlier. The bookmark one. You can see there are a load of character types. I believe in total there is 26. Why don't we count them? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. Damn it! Alright, so there's 20 awaken characters. And then, well, no, there's 21 archetypes in total. There's a special one called the Sleeper, which is basically someone who's not grasped that they're in this illusion or anything like that. So sometimes you might have scenarios that start with that. Then all these other ones are sort of known as awaken archetypes, which means that they're aware that something's not right, something is strange. There is also like then enhanced, which is like slightly an upgraded one where, you know, you start to take on special powers and stuff. And then finally, there is a final level whose name I can't remember right now. I think that might be only in the core rulebook, where basically you become like almost like avatars and archons, and you basically become an NPC because you have gone into that illusion. You've become a servant of one of the demons there, which are. But yeah, so you can see the full detail there, and we'll probably look at look at maybe one or two from the quick start and compare it to the player's guide as well. Hi, this looks really cool. Oh, thanks, Blues Scat. How are you? Oh, Blues Cat. Yes, nice to see you, my friend. Yeah, we're just looking at Kult Divinity Lost because I've been running an RPG stream for RP Geeks, and so we're just looking at the quick start, and then we're just going to do a little bit of back and forth, essentially. Let's see. Let's start. So, every PC has a past which has shaped her into who she is today. Here's the other thing, which I appreciate you probably all saw this right at the beginning. It always refers to player characters or GMs as she, using the she pronoun throughout, which I really like. It's just, I think it's, again, I'm a fan of using different kinds of pronouns throughout RPG supplements, and just to indicate that there are bigger audiences out there who are probably playing these games. But I feel like this particular book has gone out of its way to do that sort of thing, along with the horror contract, along with the safety tool stuff. I feel like this has been an obvious choice, which is great. And props to Helmsgast and obviously Modiphius when it first came out. All the good stuff. So, traumatic events, guarded secrets, and encounters with the supernatural has instilled a suspicion that something isn't right. Through pain, fear, guilt, and madness, these events have shaped a player character's personality and provided her with strengths and weaknesses. We're coming into what makes up a character now. So, dark secrets, advantages, and disadvantages. These events and personality traits are represented in the form of dark secrets, advantages, and disadvantages. Every character begins play with one or more dark secrets, 2 advantages, and 3 advantages. Dark secrets are windows into the traumatic, mystical, or guilt-laden events in the character's past. Each dark secret has a theme which the player and the GM can take into consideration when working out the specifics of the secret, but any given dark secret can provide the framework for a great variety of events. It's used as inspiration to develop a character's concept and backstory, but also acts as a storytelling aid, for the GM and for the players. Through the player character's dark secrets, the GM is provided with concrete themes for the story, such as guilt, revenge, flight, sorrow, passion, and redemption. They also serve as anchor points for locations, objects, and entities to include when preparing for a story. So this is the thing I do find really interesting. It's coming from the view that you are probably going to be creating a scenario from your characters, rather than having a scenario and having the player characters fit in, perhaps. And that goes back to that horror contract as well. If, for example, you were like, sexual violence, we want it completely off the table, we're like, okay, well, that means certain archetypes and certain dark secrets can't be used in the game. And so it just able to narrow down that story in a certain way as well. And it's interesting because then obviously you have some of the free scenarios. A lot of them do have pre-made characters to use as well, but ultimately it's up to the GM to create a story from what the players have sort of given it and what they've chosen as their archetypes and their dark secrets and advantages and disadvantages. I just find that really interesting, because I feel like often, for me, it's the other way around. It's obviously I'm going to do something that's published. Okay, you can play whatever you want. This makes it more tailored and maybe that be a bit more personal, you know. Though the player character's dark secrets... Oh, yeah, I've told you that. They also serve as... Yeah. Oh, sorry. I'm talking too much, that's why. Disadvantages can be personal failings or odious personality traits, conditions afflicting the character, or external threats in the form of individuals, institutions, creatures, and supernatural powers. The character might suffer from schizophrenia, harbour a rampant urge to take revenge on someone, or being followed by faceless enemies. Disadvantages are moves rolled by the players, but unlike basic player moves, they serve to provide the GM with opportunities to affect the player character later on in the story. Examples might be that the character's schizophrenia distorts her perception of reality, or that the character's pursuers catch up with her. But yeah, so they're like disadvantages and advantages are like special player moves that are individual to that player character, and yeah, it's not necessarily like, oh, as we were saying before, like you roll 3d10 and you take the lowest for using your disadvantage. It's more about, what if this happens, can we have like an interesting story element about it? Ultimately, it's not about failing or passing. Like that is the core bit of this, but in creating a story, it just gives you more opportunities to do something interesting with flawed characters. Because here's the other thing as well, which maybe isn't obvious to everyone. Well, wasn't obvious to me until we started playing. These aren't good characters. As you read through and you read the sort of the archetypes and stuff, they're not supposed to be heroes. They are flawed human beings. And there's something really cool about playing that. Again, as long as everyone's on the same page about it, and there's the horror contract and session zeros, being able to explore these issues and explore these dark secrets in a safe environment. I just think that's really interesting. So that's why I guess that's why I've been drawn to looking at Kult quite a bit, is because of that, being able to do horror stories, but in a safe way that people afterwards go, whoa, that was, I don't know what to say about that, but I really enjoyed the experience. I was scared, I was horrified, but I really enjoyed it. So there you go. Oh, hello, Helen. How nice to see you. Oh, thank you. That's so kind of you to say. Well, thank you for your comment on the Dragonbane video. I tend not to do these streams that often, unfortunately. Life gets in the way, but I thought we'd be doing just a couple more because I've got a bit of a free evening. But thank you so much. Well, I'm glad you're enjoying it. Please do feel free to check out the podcast as well if that's of interest. And hello, Kevin. Hi, Kevin. Nice to see you as well. For those people who've just joined us, we're looking through Kult, Divinity Lost, the Quick Start Guide. It's a contemporary horror role-playing game. I will say again, because people are joining, mature themes, content warnings, etc. So again, if it's not for you, that's absolutely fine. But just take care of yourself, because we're going to go through. We're looking at just at the quick start, so hopefully it should be okay, and all the horrible stuff is kept to a minimum. But just take care. Your mileage may vary. Where were we? Yes, we got to the bottom of that bit. Advantages are strengths, rare abilities, supernatural powers, and resources the character can use in the story to gain an edge and be able to accomplish things that others can't. The character might be tough and doesn't get hurt easily, or has special training in investigation of crime scenes, maintain influential friends, or is the leader of a gang of underlings. Advantages are moves which either give the character permanent bonuses on rolls, which is always good, of a certain kind, extend the scope of a basic move, or provide players with the opportunity to take special actions that nobody else can. Fantastic. 10 attributes, each of them with associated moves. We kind of talked about this a little bit earlier. The attributes modify the die rolls of the player moves and advantages. Attributes and their moves are either passive, so they're triggered automatically when conditions are met, or they're active, triggered by a player character taking a certain action. Passive attributes are used to resist external and internal influences. Moves associated with passive attributes are triggered when the player character is threatened. When creating a player character, okay, so we're going into character creation just now, you need to distribute the following values, so +2, +1, and 0, across passive attributes, and these are fortitude, willpower, and reflexes. Fortitude is a measure of the character's physical resistance, pain threshold, and stress response when suffering physical injury. with high fortitude is capable of enduring injuries that would drop a character with a lower fortitude. Fair enough. Blues Cat. I find Kult is more about the personal horror, where the game is developed around the character, whereas in Call of Cthulhu, you are insignificant. That's so true. Yeah, I guess that's true, isn't it? Because even in this game, where ultimately you're all kept in this illusion, this horror thing, and that you have these huge demons, these archons, but they need you. They need you to give them power. Because that's it. That's the whole thing. Is that you're suffering. You're born, you live, you die, you rebirth, still trapped in the machine, and they feed off your misery as a result. So you are quite important. Whereas Call of Cthulhu, they don't care about it. Also, I would also say I wouldn't fight an archon in this, but your mileage may vary. Willpower. This measures the player character's mental resilience, composure, peace of mind, and capacity for working through trauma. A character with a high willpower can resist the influence of supernatural powers and stay sane despite terrifying experiences. And then finally, the final passive one is reflexes. They measure the player character's quickness, responsiveness, and instinct when physically assaulted or when at risk of physical injury. A character with quick reflexes is better at getting out of harm's way. So those were those 3 passive ones. Now we're going to look at the active ones, and that's going to be the other 7 attributes. So, excuse me. Active attributes are used when a player character acts proactively. The player character's moves associated with an active attribute trigger when they take a certain action in the fiction. When creating a player character, the player distributes the following adjustment values of a +3, +2, 2 +1s, a 0, a -1, and a -2 across the active attributes, which include reason, intuition, perception, coolness, violence, charisma, and soul. So reason measures a player character's analytical ability. Intuition measures a character's empathy and gut feeling. Perception measures a player character's alertness. Coolness measures the player character's cool. Who knows what that means, really? I mean, I think it's different to what it actually talks about, stealth, theft, etc. It's just being quick under pressure, being cool under pressure, rather than hey, I've been to the theatre. I don't know. Violence measures the player character's raw strength, fighting expertise, and viciousness. Charisma measures the player character's charm, leadership, and rhetorical talent. Soul measures how sensitive the player character is to supernatural forces. There you go. Would be cool if you looked into the Changeling the Lost in a future stream. Oh, I'm always taking suggestions. Let me write that down. And of course I don't have any paper to hand. I do. Hang on, I've got this. Let me write that down. It's on the list. To be fair, I've got so many. I'd love to do the new Werewolf 5th edition. I'd like to have a look at it at least. I know. There's been some controversy around it as usual, and the same with we did look at Vampire a little while ago, but there's some new books out about Vampire which talks about the emotional bleed stuff and controversy online. It's tricky. I can't comment on it too much because I haven't really read it, so I don't really know, but anything to do with emotional bleed you have to be careful for, because not everyone appreciates that when they do their role play. But I've written it down, Changeling the Lost, because that sounds like a fun one as well. Thank you for that, Blues Cat. Player moves. Moves available to all the characters. So yes, this was what I was talking about before. When a player executes an action in the story that triggers a move, they roll 2 10-sided dice and reference the move's instructions to find out what happens depending on the dice outcome. The GM will describe the outcome in the story and might, in some cases, follow up with her. Might in some cases make her own follow-up moves. And then it talks about the composition of the move. We kind of already talked about this a little bit. You have the trigger at the top, what the text says basically, and that's how the move gets triggered. The roll, so what they have to roll plus whatever the modifier is. If they've got one, it could be 0 depending on what it is, and then the outcome as well. That's all fine. So we don't need to. Oh, this chapter describes all the player moves. A move is described in its entirety, followed by a trigger and an outcome. What I quite like about this quick start, it's a little bit boring if you're reading it out loud on a stream, but at least it's this is the move, this is the trigger, we're doing it structure by structure, so you know exactly what what is happening. It's all explained, which is something I actually do with my clients at work. I have to be like, you have to explain what's coming up. If you've got like a half an hour PowerPoint presentation, you have to be like, here at the beginning we're going to look at the who, what, where, and do quiz questions at the end, because people want to know. It's just easier for structure stuff, isn't it? Also, the story of the game is developed with the characters in mind specifically, even if you might be puny in the grand scheme of things, lol. Kev, has anyone played the Lost Souls role-playing game? I haven't played the Lost Souls role-playing game. Lost Souls, that's not the Demon Souls role-playing game, is it? I heard bad things about that one. I've not heard of the Lost Souls one. Kev, can you talk about it a little bit? I'd love to know more about it. So here are the main things. We'll do this first bit. Let's go through endure injury. So when enduring an injury, classic, roll fortitude minus harm. I know it's going to talk about harm and wounds down here in a second. If you're wearing armor, add its rating to the roll. 15 plus, you ride out the pain and keep going. 10 to 14, you're still standing, but the GM picks one of the following options. So the injury throws you off balance, you lose something, you receive a serious wound. And then a 9 or less, the injury is overwhelming. You, the player, choose if you are knocked out, brutal, receive a critical wound but may continue to act. If you already have a critical wound, you may not choose this option again, or die. Wow, that's brutal. I mean, each story in Kult is often tailored around specific characters. I haven't heard of Lost Souls, no. Fair. So, serious wounds. The wound requires appropriate care and time to heal, very much like Call of Cthulhu, but it will not get worse on its own. Alcohol and painkillers can remove the penalty the wound imposes, if only temporarily. The player character can at most have 4 serious wounds. Additional serious wounds are considered critical. Examples of serious wounds include lacerated arm, facial cuts, broken ribs, a bone deep cut, concussion, profuse bleeding, broken fingers, sprained ankle, etc. Critical wounds. This wound will not heal on its own and will get worse if untreated. A critical wounded character must get medical care urgently if they wish to live. When a critical wound has been stabilized and given time to heal, it is considered a stabilized serious wound. Fine. Examples of critical wounds include punctured lung, severed aorta, oh dear, spilling intestines, a mangled arm, wow, gun-blasted genitalia. Sorry, I shouldn't laugh at that. That sounds dreadful. Torn out eyeball, shattered shoulder, internal bleeding, spinal cord damage, cerebral hemorrhage. Wow. If you have any non-stabilized serious or critical wounds, you're subject to the following penalties below. So if you have any serious wounds, -1 ongoing. So it'll be a -1 to your 2d10 roll plus your thing. So I guess that's up here, right? Minus harm. So, oops, sorry. That must be what it is. I guess it says harm up there, but then it talks about wounds. I assume harm is like the collective, like that's how many wounds you've got. I think you should say minus total number of wounds, just to make it incredibly clear. I guess, well, no, because I guess the serious wounds, it doesn't like stack up. You always got a -1, right? Yes, must be. And then critical wounds is another one, but then you've got both. Okay. It's not like if you had like 3 serious wounds, it's not going to be a -3. It's just going to be a -1. But if you've got a serious wound and a critical wound, or a critical, yeah. Right, there you go. Welcome to Fiona Talks to Herself for 2.5 hours. So then we've got avoid harm. So when you dodge, parry, or block harm, roll plus reflexes. 15 plus, you emerge completely unharmed. 10 to 14, you avoid the worst of it, but the GM decides if you end up in a bad spot, lose something, or partially sustain harm. If you were too slow to react, or you made a bad judgment, made a bad judgment call if you were at 9 or less. Perhaps you didn't avoid any harm at all, or you ended up in an even worse spot before. The GM makes a hard or soft move. Kev says the characters in the Lost Souls starts off dead and rolls to find out the cause of death, and the game is to progress through to heaven. If you fail, you can be reincarnated as an amoeba. Nice. What about the Dark Souls RPG? Now, I'll be honest, I have never played Dark Souls, or I've played like the first 10 minutes and gone, nah, not for me. I hear the lore of it is excellent, so would check that out. I hear, though, the RPG was really not great. Like, when it first got, that first printing came out, lots of things were wrong in it. The physical books, like just weren't good, and the system, I think it hadn't been proofread at all, so I think there's a lot of outcry about that. Again, this is me speculating about something I'd not really heard of, but perhaps this sort of thing. Could be interesting. Again, I guess it's one of those things because it's based on a video game, world that people really, really enjoy. It makes sense that people would want to play similar things. But then again, you could totally play Dark Souls with like Morkborg, or very rules light system. You don't have to have it too crunchy, or have what was the other one I was thinking of just then? Dark Souls, like there's a Dishonored RPG as well. I guess, and there's a Bunkers and Badasses, which is the Borderlands RPG as well. And I think it's cool because it's trying to emulate the video game aspects of the RPG. But if you want to play an RPG with people who've maybe not played RPGs but played video games, why wouldn't you use just a rules light one and just have like a hack of that? So I don't know. Lost Souls is very tongue-in-cheek. I like it. It sounds good. I'll definitely check it out, Kev. Thanks for that recommendation. Next up we have Keep It Together. When you exercise self-control to keep from succumbing to stress, traumatic experiences, psychic influence, or supernatural forces, roll plus willpower. Plus 15, you grit your teeth and stay the course without undue influence. The effort to resist instills a condition which remains with you until you've had time to recuperate. Choose one, so from 10 to 14, that's that one. So, you become angry, you become sad, you become scared, you become guilt-ridden, and each of them is a loss in stability, which hopefully it'll talk about in a second. That was the thing I was struggling with. You become obsessed, +1 relation to whatever caused the condition. You become distracted, and -2 in situations where the condition will limit you. You will be haunted by the experience at a later time. You'll get a -1 in situations where this condition would be a hindrance. Interesting. And then a 9 or less, the strain is too much for your mind to handle. The GM will choose your reaction. Cower powerlessly in the threat's presence. Panic with no control over your actions. Excuse me. Suffer emotional trauma, -2 stability, or suffer life-changing trauma, -4 stability. Oh, that's pretty bad. I wonder, again, because obviously it says like, 9 or less. Imagine if you got an 8 and the GM was like, yes, life-changing drama, -4 stability. I think for something like that, because that's pretty brutal in this game, when you only have like 4 serious wounds and then 1 critical wound, I want to say. I would put that as like maybe like a natural 1. Oh no, a natural 2. You don't get natural 1s in this game because obviously it's 2d10, isn't it? So, or maybe like a 5 or less. I don't know. Oh, there you go. Literally, it says here. So it's stability. So everyone starts off as composed, and then slowly but surely you make your way down. So interesting. So you've got easy, unfocused, and that is sort of you're at moderate stress. So that's a -1 disadvantage. I assume that's like. I assume that's like to all rolls, not just to your disadvantage rolls, right? Maybe. I'll double check. It will tell me in a second. And serious stress is you -1 to the actual keep it together, and then -2 to the other. So I think that's, yeah. And critical stress when you're anxious, any of these ones going down, I guess. -2 to keep it together, -3 to disadvantages, +1 to see through the illusion though. And then when you're broken, the GM makes moves. Here we go. Stability measures how comfortable the player character is mentally. The character starts off as the composed state, but the stability may decrease upon experiencing traumatic events. When the character is broken, the GM makes a move at the time of the choosing, which could be as follows. Activate a disadvantage failure, -9 effect. The illusion tears around or for the character. The character shifts in time and space. Fragments of the character's dark secret manifest in the present-day reality. The character gets a new disadvantage based on the event. The character becomes suicidal and must succeed a keep it together roll to resist the impulse. Oh, that's pretty damn brutal, isn't it? Or give the character one of these. They undergo change. Switch 2 attributes with different values. Improve the stability to anxious. Interesting. So yeah, so it must be like you must go for every single stage. It's not just like we're here in stability, we're at uneasy, and then we're now going to shake and you take another one. You have to go through these stages. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, you got 10 stages. Okay, that makes sense. Your life changes direction. Choose a new archetype. Improve stability to neurotic. Where's neurotic? Oh, there. You catch a glimpse of the truth. +1 experience. Oh, experience? No. Some people called Symbaroum the Dark Souls of tabletop RPGs, but that was before Dark Souls was a tabletop RPG. And anyway, we're talking about Kult now, so sorry. No, don't be sorry. Symbaroum is a great... I love the concept of Symbaroum. I feel that's different in the sense of like that is like a high fantasy horror one because of all the stuff with the trees, that forest, that living forest, which could be really cool. It could be very folklore as well. It could be like not Midsummer. There's various horror films that are set in forests. I know, but yeah, that's what I think of it as. I think it's because it's I guess it is maybe Dark Souls. There's that corruption element of it, isn't there? So, but I feel like it's more high fantasy, but with a forest is what I think of it like that. Then there's also Trophy as well by the Gauntlet games as well, which also does stuff similar. Act under pressure. When you do something risky under time pressure or try to avoid danger, the GM will explain what the consequence of failure is. That's an important one for me. I should explain what that is. And you roll plus coolness. On a 15 and plus, you do it. On a 10 to 14, you do it, but hesitate, is delayed, or must deal with a complication. The GM reveals an unexpected outcome, a high price, or a difficult choice. And then a 9 or below, there are consequences. You made a mistake or you're exposed to danger. The GM makes a hard or soft move. Engaged in combat. When you engage an able opponent in combat, explain how and roll plus violence. So I like that because it again, obviously we're not comparing this to D&D at all, but you know, D&D is like, I've got these specialized moves. Here, you could do anything, and it doesn't matter what you do. It still depends on that plus violence. You know, you'll have like weapons and stuff, and you might have advantages that help improve those rolls a little bit, but it feels like you can do pretty much anything in combat or describe it in a certain way, and it's all one sort of move. Like you'd be like, I roll out of the way, I jump up, and then I punch the monster. It's not like several checks, that's all in one move, which I quite like. 15 plus, you inflict damage to your opponent and avoid counterattacks. 10 to 14, you inflict damage but at a cost. The GM chooses one, so you're subjected to a counterattack. You do less damage than intended. You do something important. You expend all your ammo. Oh, brutal. You're beset by a new threat. You will be in trouble later on. And your attack didn't go as anticipated. You might be subjected to bad luck, miss your target, or pay a high price for your assault. The GM makes a hard or soft. Very good. One of the developers talked about how he studied trauma responses and learnt that people often react in basic ways, fight, flight, etc., and didn't like how in some games you just go mad. was that for Kult or Symbaroum? Yeah, I agree, and it's the same. Oh, it's the same. We've got to always have to be careful with like madness mechanics, right? Insanity and all that sort of thing, because you know we don't want to necessarily punch down on like people, you know, that could be their lived experience and stuff. So sometimes it feels odd to make that gamified. So I always appreciate if there's different ways of doing that sort of thing. But I know sometimes it's very tied into, say, like, you know, Call of Cthulhu. It is kind of about it in a little way. So, you know, again, each to their own. You'll manage very and that's the best bit, right? You can play loads of different horror games, and all of them have a different taste. You know, and sorry, I'm getting excited now because like I feel like horror. When you talk to someone about horror, because there's so many different flavors of horror, people go, "Oh, not for me," and I'm like, I bet there is a horror game for you, where you can experience something that you enjoy. It doesn't have to be gory. It doesn't have to be like jump scare. It could just be like slow tension and suspense. You know, it doesn't have to be about madness. It doesn't have to be monsters. It could be something else. Just because there's a different way of telling a story. So, anyway, I will shut up now. Okay, you, Cthulhu. Yeah, exactly. Influence other. When you influence an NPC through negotiation, argument, or from a position of power, roll plus charisma. On a 15 plus, she does what you ask. 10 to 14, she does what you ask, but the GM chooses one. She demands better compensation. A complication will arise at a future time. She gives in for a moment, but changes her mind later will change her mind and regret it later. And then 9 or less, you have unintended repercussions. The GM makes a hard or soft move. And then it's slightly different. So that's an NPC, but then for a player character, you get plus 15 is both, or 10 to 14 is choose one. They're motivated to do as you ask and get a +1 for their next roll if they do it. They're worried that might happen if they don't do what you ask, and gets a -1 stability if they don't go through with it. Ooh, interesting. That's interesting, that. Again, the problem I have is that a +1 probably means absolutely nothing if you roll badly. And then a 9 less, the character gets a +1 on their roll against you. GM makes a hard or soft move. Fair enough. No matter the outcome, it's always a player character's option whether to do what you asked or not. Yes, consent matters, folks. Read a person. This is the insight, right? When you read a person, roll plus intuition. Ooh. On a success, you may ask the GM or player questions about their character anytime during the scene whilst in conversation with their character. On a +15, ask 2 questions. On a 10 to 14, ask 1 question. Or a 9, you accidentally reveal your own intentions to the person you're trying to read. Tell the GM or player what those intentions are, and the GM will make a hard or soft move. And here's some examples of some questions. As I said when I did the stream of this, I said, please feel free to ask something more specific. These are all very general questions, right? Which are good, but I think sometimes I would really struggle to be like, oh, I don't know. I can't really get a sense of what to ask. Like I always say, like, choose from the list, or feel free to ask me any question as the GM, because, I'd rather, again, it's that whole thing about I want them to ask a question that helps move the story along in some way. So maybe that does make me a good GM in a sense, because then I could always reveal more information than what they've rolled for. But I just feel like these 5 questions, they're good, but they might not cover everything about insight of a person. Especially if it's about something specific, because I know a lot of players do like to ask about very specific questions, whereas here obviously it's a bit more broad. Yeah, for Kult. The thing about Kult is that it moves isn't really different to combat as in other situations. So combat doesn't really become like a mini game that might take away from the immersion. Ideally, anyway. Yeah, agreed. I think sometimes it's about breaking that as well. And Powered by the Apocalypse games are like that as well, in general. But we have to break away from like, okay, initiative, right? It's so and so. It's this person, etc. And getting away from looking at the character sheet, going, what can I do? Which is always, I'm the same. I use my character sheet as a crux all the time. Excuse me. So observe the situation. Roll plus perception. On a success, you may ask GM question about the situation. So I see. So observe the situation is obviously different to the person, because you're reading a person, and a situation is different. On a success, you may ask a question about the situation. When you act on those answers, take a +1 to your roll. 15 plus, ask 2 questions. On a 10 to 14, ask 1 question. At 9 or less, you get to ask a question anyway. But you attract unwanted attention or expose yourself to danger. The GM makes a hard or soft move. So here we've got the questions. What's my best way through this? What here poses the biggest threat? What can I use to my advantage? What should I be on the lookout for? What is being hidden from me, and what seems so strange about this? Read. Whoop. Investigate. When you investigate something, roll plus reason. On a success, you uncover all direct leads and may ask questions to get additional information. Ask 2 questions if you get 15 plus. 10 to 14, ask 1 question, but the information comes with a cost determined by the GM. You need someone or something to get you the answer. You expose yourself to danger, or you must spend time or resources. No one ever thinks about that, the time or resources it takes to get an answer for something. I don't know about you. No one ever answers my emails at work. I'm constantly rolling a 10 to 14 when I do investigate. You may ask 1 question anyway, but expose yourself to danger to unexpected dangers of the cost. GM makes a hard or soft move. So, how can I find out more about what I'm investigating? What's my gut feeling of what am I investigating? Is there anything weird about what I'm investigating? Yeah, there needs to be other questions for that. Those feel a bit like, I don't know. Especially if the players are cool and smart, in the sense of like they're trying to use what they've written down all their notes and they're trying to pick out something. Yeah, that's the only thing. Help and hindering, so we talked about this earlier. When you help or hinder a player's character's move, explain how before the roll, and then roll plus attribute where the attribute is the same as the other character that the other character's rolling. Plus 15, you may modify their roll by +2 or -2. 10 to 14, you may modify it by a +1 or -1. And then a 9, your interference has unintended consequences. The GM makes a hard or soft move. Again, I feel like this, like, you know, you could, like I said, you could either roll really high and you go, oh yeah, I have a +2, and then that other person just rolls absolutely garbage and they still fail. So I feel like that particular one where you're helping, because there's, again, it feels like there's no advantage or disadvantage to this, that you want to just bump it up the success level. Because they do that in Brindlewood Bay, and they do that in The Between. Like, you can, you know, rather than like, you know, you roll badly, but then you to help or hinder or to put on a crown, or as that term is, you know, do a flashback, you put on a crown, etc. You bump up the success level rather than you just add 2. But I don't know. So no difference between fighting a monster and arguing with your girlfriend. Joke. Well, let me tell you. With the GM's assent, a player may make a case for a retroactive assist or hindrance after the roll is made, but in stressful situations, this often results in a hard choice between 2 possible actions. See through the illusion. When you suffer shock, injuries, or distort your perception through drugs or rituals, roll plus soul to see through the illusion. On a 15+, you perceive things as they truly are. 10 to 14, you see reality, but also you're affected by the illusion. The GM chooses one that something senses you, or the illusion tears. Ooh. And then a minus, the GM explains what you see and makes a hard or soft move. So those are all the moves. Excellent. We're already on page 11, by the way. I appreciate it taking my time through this one, but I do find it quite important. So those are the player moves. We're going back to character creation now a little bit. So we're going to talk about relations. So the player characters have a relation value to all other player characters, in addition to some of the more important non-player characters they encounter. They gain relations with non-player characters if established during character creation or during the course of the story. During character creation, relations are established between player characters. Each player can create up to 3 relations with a non-player characters, so a neutral relation, a meaningful relation, and a vital relation. Neutral applies to most relationships: acquaintance, friends, co-workers, etc. Meaningful is close friends, family members, romantic interests. Vital is passionate lovers, your own children, your one and only, or an obsession. And after each game session, you may modify a relation by a +1 or a -1 and explain why. The relation's strength can also be raised or lowered during events in play. So, you know, you're betrayed by a meaningful or vital relation, seduced by a neutral one, unexpected assistance from a neutral one, and influenced by magic or supernatural powers. This is the one thing, it doesn't, up until this point, it doesn't say, like, is this important? Like, you know, I get the whole point of, like, establishing relationships with other characters around and be like, oh, I'm more strongly bonded with so-and-so because we're best friends. I don't know so-and-so at all, so that's going to be a 0. I get that. But so what? I know it's going to say here in the moves, I just don't, it doesn't feel important in the game, for me anyway. I think it only happens for certain moves. So he talks about it here, the relation move. These are only applicable to at level 1 strength, so either meaningful or 2. So nothing for acquaintances, which I guess makes sense. Wish no harm. If you intend on harming or killing your relation, whether directly or indirectly, you must make a keep it together move, with the influence being an unwillingness to cause injury. In case of success with a complication, in addition to the normal outcome, you get a minus relationship modified in your damage inflicting move. In a case of 9 or less, in addition to the normal outcome, you cannot bring yourself to harm your relation. Okay, I guess maybe it's trying to sort out this advantage, you know, because you can't do any disadvantage, right? Regain stability. In a scene where you experience closeness, assurance, and affirmation from a relation, stability improves the number of steps equal to the strength of relation value. So that, I think, is quite important. That would have been good if that was talked about much earlier, like down here. Lose stability. If a relation of yours is seriously injured or dies, your stability is decreased by a number of steps equal to the strength of the relation value. Again, really interesting. It shows that this is important. Having a relation is important to your stability. Why isn't that earlier? Let's see what else. Dramatic hooks. So dramatic hook is a request for a player to have a character to take a certain action in a story. At the beginning of each game session, each character should have 2 dramatic hooks. During the first session, the player gets to choose 2 dramatic hooks on her own, and then in later sessions, the player character receives dramatic hooks from other players and the GM. When she's fulfilled a dramatic hook, she asks other players to think of a new one. When a dramatic hook is fulfilled, the player marks 1 experience. The player can ask to exchange a dramatic hook for another one if the game shares some patterns without any dramatic hooks being fulfilled. When players think of dramatic hooks, they may use the following verbs for inspiration. You should: finish, reveal, tell, visit, complete, confront, investigate, or develop. Interesting enough, not dramatic hooks. It's like learning objectives. Having those words like evaluate or understand, just to summarize that what their short-term goals is, because that's what this is. A dramatic hook is a short-term goal, I think anyway. Finish a sentence with something appropriate. For example, you should visit the place where the kidnapper took you, or you should reveal your your cheatingness, to your wife. Yeah, that you're cheating to your wife. Infidelity. There you go. I got there in the end. Player character can be considered to have fulfilled the dramatic hook regardless of what transpired in the scene for as long as the player executed the verb. Don't dictate what the outcome of the scene should be when determining a dramatic hook. That will be discovered in play. So after each session, the players now answer the following questions. Again, very similar to most Powered by the Apocalypse games. Did we discover anything new about the truth? Have we learned anything new about our characters? Have we challenged ourselves? For each question, the player can justify answering yes to. Every player character gets 1 experience. Well, that's good. So it's not necessarily... I guess these are more general questions, right? But if someone says, oh yes, so-and-so really stood up to, I don't know, their evil boss. Oh, well, everyone gets a +1. This implies the player characters can gain up to 3 experience from these questions after each session. And they can gain more experience with dramatic hooks and certain advantages. Right. When a PC has accumulated 5 experience, the player character chooses an advancement available on the character sheet. Right, this is where the advancements come in. They can increase attribute values or give PCs additional advantages. When advantage has been chosen, it is crossed off, meaning some advantages may only be chosen a few times. By the 6th advancement, the player will unlock a new set of advancements, which might mean attributes can increase even higher or even change a PC's archetype. That comes from that enhanced archetype I was talking about before. Seems like this game might do with a proper session 0, especially if the GM is making their own story. Absolutely, absolutely, Blues Cat. It's it's. There is they do have a whole campaign called the Black Madonna, which and obviously with all those little scenarios and stuff, but I think it is absolutely valued. Like, you have to have a separate session, again, to talk about that horror contract, talk about lines and veils, all that good safety stuff. But yeah, to really make a character, because ultimately that character creation is that simple. It's pick that dark secret, and it gives an example of like what that could be. Here's some associated. Sorry, let's start at the beginning. It'll be pick that archetype, which then has a list of dark secrets you can pick from, and then you can define it. Pick 2 disadvantages, pick 3 advantages, do your ability checks, assign your ability scores to those 10 stats that you have, pick your appearance, that's 1, and then some, maybe talk about some equipment that you might have, and that's kind of it. It's ultimately quite straightforward, but a lot of it is talking about like, okay, well, what do I want to see in the game, and creating that backstory for your players, and dramatic hooks as well. On top of that, we've not used it for our particular scenario because, again, it was a pre-made scenario, so it's it's unlikely they're gonna need it. But again, if you want to drop that particular scenario into a long-running campaign, maybe they already have some dramatic hooks that could be tied into the scenario that you want to pick. Weapons and armor. These rules explain how weapons and armor work. The GM can decide if the player characters are only equipped with firearms or other deadly weapons if it seems appropriate based on the setting and the concept of the player character. Weapon types. God, this is a thing that I do struggle with combat so much that weapons are boring. So we've got basic harm. So this is the harm that the weapon type will do before any advantages or edges have been modified. We take basic harm. But harm mechanics have two effects. They subtract harm value when they make the endure injury roll. Okay. Right. Oh, I see. I understand now. So base harm. So this is going to be like here. This is that number. So it'll be, what was it for that first one? Right, I've now I understand the assignment. I understand the rules. So here. Roll plus fortitude minus the harm of the weapon. Right. Harm value, it should say then. That makes, again, that would have been good to have it up here. Harm value in brackets of the weapon being used. Very hard to put that on a card, perhaps, but that makes so much more sense now. So they subtract it from the endure injury. NPCs can take harm value directly after subtracting any armor. Ammo, this is a value indicating how many times a firearm can be fired before it needs recharging. The value doesn't literally indicate how much ammo is in the weapon, but is symbolic about how many rounds is being discharged in a typical attack. To use an attack, you must first ensure that you have the required amount of ammo to spend. Using the attack, check off that amount of ammo on the ammo rack. Cool. Rule of thumb distance. We've got arm, close enough to attack with a leap. Room, you're several steps apart. Field, when you're within 100 meters of one another, and then horizon, you can barely see your target with the naked eye. Okay, different forms of attack that player characters can make with a weapon. The first underlined attack is the default one, unless the player is the. The first underlined attack is the default. Oh, it's the default is the player doesn't specify otherwise. Yeah, of course. Sorry, there's some typos there. The value is in the angled brackets. Square brackets is the amount called for. Right, so here, if we had this edged weapon up here, so if we had like a knife, the range of it is the arm, and then close combat, so that first one, if I said, right, if I don't specify what I want, I could just do it close combat, so I'd, if it was against another player character, they'd roll plus fortitude minus 2. And then we go from there. Edge, but then the alternate attack would be edge at the throat. You're in control of the target until they break free. Oh, very cool. Oh, I like that. That makes a lot more sense now why they've done it like this. We won't go for everything. Let's say unarmed. So again, that's at arm's distance. First thing is just being violent. But then you've also got lock. So probably you're grappling someone. You're in control of the target until they break freeze, but there's no harm damage, no harm value to take away from them. Shift. You create distance between yourself and the target through a throw, body check, or push. Disarm. You remove an object from your opponent's hand. An excessive force. Your focus is entirely on killing your target. That's a -2. The endure injury one. Oh, interesting. Oh, hi everyone. Hello. Hi Sig. Nice to see you here. Hope you're having a good evening. I'm just going through Kult Divinity Lost. Just having a chit chat with folks and just trying to learn how to play. So we've got not going to go through every one of these, but yes, we've got edged weapons, crushing weapons, crush weapons. Have you brought your chopping weapon with you? Then range weapons. So this is where the ammo stuff comes in. Very cool. So I've got the room. An example of what kind of thing. If I don't specify the attack, it's aim and fire, which will be 2, but then -1 ammo. I need to cross that off once the attack is done. Concentrated fire, so that'll be 3. Yeah, okay. This makes more sense because before I was like, I don't get this at all. Now that makes more sense. Very good. Armor. Let's talk about armor, shall we? Woohoo! PCs who wear armor get a positive modifier to their endure injury roll. NPCs who wear armor get to subtract their armor rating from the amount of harm they take each time it applies. Yeah, because we're not rolling 2d10s, are we? So normal is just a +1 to your endure injury roll, and then heavy is +2. Excuse me. And that's it for that. Which that's it for weapons and fighting. Certainly in the quick start, which is But let's talk. So this is the thing I was going to talk about before. It was the archetype. So each archetype is a set of options, which, when chosen, combine to define a unique player character centered around a particular concept or theme. The archetypes originate from movies, books, and other sources of inspiration. For Kult, Divinity Lost, it could be the Avenger who's dedicated their life to take revenge of an old injustice, the artist who tracks dark forces through their art, the disillusioned detective who has sacrificed everything in the pursuit of an elusive serial killer, or a seeker who has discovered a terrible conspiracy and is now hunted by faceless pursuers. The archetypes aren't limited to a handful of stereotypes, but can be tuned to a role the player really wants to portray. And all archetypes can be reused again and again and still create unique player characters. The rules serve as mostly as a framework for creative constraint, which assists both player and GM in the telling of the story. Before you play, you should print out the 4 archetypes and 1 copy of the player sheet for each player. Each player character should be based on a unique archetype, which limits the number of players to 4 within these quick start. Right, I should zoom in a little bit. The group can either discuss what sort of story they'd like to play and create characters later, or the GM can give the players directions on what kind of characters to create. In the former case, the GM will prepare a scenario based on the characters players have created, leveraging the players' dark secrets and disadvantages for the setup and backstory. In the latter case, the GM prepares a scenario ahead of time and predetermines guidelines for creating suitable player characters. Read more about this in the construct scenario chapter later on. I guess then, because we've been talking about this throughout the stream, I guess what's interesting about that is that if you were bringing people who were brand new to Kult, or maybe brand new to role-playing games. I mean, first of all, I don't know if you would start with Kult necessarily, but I guess if you were going to people brand new, or maybe not brand new to Kult per se, that's a bit of a misnomer, but maybe brand new to Powered by the Apocalypse games, maybe that's when you'd use that latter thing where you've already got a little bit of stories just to help people smooth the character creation a bit, because sometimes people have no idea what they want to play as either. So maybe just having that as a smooth, like, let's quickly play a game, etc. But I do think, as we've discussed throughout, Kult is definitely one for, like, right, you create your characters, what kind of horror stories do you want to play, and then create the scenario from that. Hopefully they've changed the term harm to harm value in the later editions. Well, I don't know. I'm going to say probably not, because I didn't see that before. I imagine Twin Peaks would be a great setting for this game. That's a good thought, actually. I guess if Twin Peaks was even more horror and demons and blood and body horror and stuff. That's a good shout though as well. Like, what other? I'm trying to think what other systems would, not other systems. What other things would be good for this? Maybe an element of like Bioshock could be something like this again, like sort of art deco type thing, when things aren't as what it seems. Certainly Bioshock Infinity would be probably quite good for it as well. Or Silent Hill, but it's been done. I mean, Silent Hill's great. Silly, but great. Yes, that was it. That was another media touchstone, was Silent Hill. That's Seth Wachowski talked about as well. Anyway, sorry, where was I? Group. 4 aware archetypes are included in this rule set. So, the artist, the detective, the avenger, and the seeker. The main Kult Divinity Lost includes an additional 20, so these are all the other ones here. Well, that's just what we'll do for this, because I'm appreciative of time. We've already been talking for ages, and we've only done 13 clubbing pages. Well, let's look at the artist, which will be on this next page, and we'll go through what that means. So yeah, each of these archetypes come with a sort of little picture. Very typical that artists always have some sort of like camera or a random dove on their shoulder for some reason. The artist. The artist exists to create and to give their soul to the arts. A hypnotizing painting, music trapping the audience in pure ecstasy, books that spellbind their readers, a model's naked flesh. Artists have the ability to speak to the souls of others by letting them into their own, and this ability has always come at a price. The price is the artists themselves. First of all, so if you take this archetype, you can choose one of the following occupations below, or invent one of your choosing, because these are just sort of examples. So you could have author, dancer would always be a really good one. I'd love to do. If I was playing this, I think I'd like to be a dancer. But we've got like designer, model, blogger. Maybe you could even do content creator at this point. Dark secrets. So yes, this is sort of the main bit where you have to choose. So you choose one or more dark secrets. For this one, it chooses. You can pick one of these four. So we've got air, we've got curse, we've got victim of a crime, we've got pact with dark forces. What I'd say, if I go to the character creation one here, and if I choose artist, it doesn't give it in too much detail. Sorry, I'll zoom in a little bit so folks can see. So it has it here, and there's six. No, sorry, there's five there. Actually, they actually are different, aren't they? So we've got cursed air, victim, and pact of dark forces. It doesn't have mental illness, funnily enough, but so it's not in as much detail. So you'd have to flip back and forth in the core book to find out what those were. Whereas I do quite like. Again, it makes sense for the quick start that it would have them bit more expanded on here for accessibility reasons. So you've been granted a unique inheritance from a relative or friend. It could be a small object or something larger, like a house. The inheritance has instilled an unnatural obsession in you. You know it hides secrets and perhaps unknown forces. Oh, that could be quite fun. You're obsessed with the house. It could possibly reveal. Oh, could it possibly reveal what transpired with the previous owner? Others want to possess your inheritance also, and you have a suspicion they will not stop at nothing They will stop at nothing. There you go, to acquire it. Curse. You've been afflicted by a curse, knowingly or unknowingly. The curse has started to influence your life, and you must find a way to get rid of it. The curse might have been inherited or something you brought upon yourself through your actions. The effects are starting to make you lose the grasp on reality and threaten to harm those closest to you. Victim of a crime. You have been subjected to a terrible crime. Your whole life is marred by what happened to you, and no matter how much you try to suppress the violation, no matter how much you try to, you cannot suppress the violation. Got there in the end. I'm reading too quickly. Fear, shame, anger, and helplessness torment you, and in order to make it through this, you have to find a way to heal your wounds. And finally, pact with dark forces. You have sealed a pact with a powerful being. You may have made the pact willingly or been tricked into it. Regardless, you are now under the being's spell. Deep inside, you understand you must find a way to trick the being into breaking the pact, but the question is, how? There you go. And so yeah, so that's like a dark secret. Like again, it's like a jumping off point, a little prompt essentially, and you can really work with your GM to really nail down. So that final one there, pact with dark forces. It will depend on like, okay, what's your occupation? Okay, looking at the law, there are these 10 different kinds of like areas that it could fall into, and maybe it's one of the lesser servants that you're in a pact with, and that's what's giving you this, and being able to really immerse and engage that character because they are part of the setting. They're with a named NPC. You know what I mean? Oh, mental illness is there. Mental illness. You or one of your close relations have a mental illness. There's a good chance you have seen with your eyes. A good chance you have seen with your eyes or heard from your relation that reality is just an illusion. But who would believe a crazy person? Psychiatric institutions may have many secrets, and many doctors have hidden motives. For the insane who end up on the streets, disturbed mentors will gladly take newcomers under their wing to initiate them in the truth. There you go. So those are the 5 different kinds of secrets, dark secret you could take. And it says one or more, so you could combine. I think when you first start out, though, it's probably better just to take one. Oh, sorry, guys. I love that word, creative constraint. It could be a band name. What music genre would you think that'd be? Probably. I don't know. They'll play like the first few bars and they go, we can't do it anymore. You can't play anymore. Sounds like the movie House. It does, doesn't it? 2 disadvantages. So the ones it suggests are depression. You constantly fight depression, dejection, and discouragement. When facing personal setbacks, roll +0. On a 15+, you remain in control. On a 10 to 14, you experience temporary anxiety, decreased self-confidence, or a lack of will. A -1 on the next roll. And then a 9 or less, you give up and succumb to hopelessness or blame yourself. Reduce your stability to -2. Reduce stability, to -2. Your inability to act or be self-destructive does not go away until you can numb your depression with medicine, drugs or alcohol. That's one kind of Oh, there's loads. Sorry, let me just double check. We don't have to read them all. There's quite a few. So yeah, there's like curse, repressed memories, nightmares, drug addicts, schizophrenia. So those are the ones you could take from that. So you could take 2 of those. And then advantages, you got artistic talent. Let's read about that one, shall we? Because that's an advantage rather than when you perform your chosen art form or show your works to an audience, roll plus charisma for opportunities to influence the audience during any scene, or any time during the scene. So plus 15, you choose two of these options. 4 to 10, you choose one option, or 9 or less, choose one option anyway, but a threat emerges. The GM makes a hard or soft move. So, they want to see more of my art. They are affected by an emotion I want to convey. Anger, sorrow, fear, lust, joy. They look up to me. Take +1 going with the audience during the scene. Yeah! Their attention is entirely fixed on me throughout my performance. Ooh, that could be really good if you were doing, like, if you were being the dancer as your occupation. That could be really fun, couldn't it? Alright, let's see what the other ones are. We've got enhanced awareness, forbidden inspiration, fascination, body awareness, celebrity, and snake charmer. So those are the other advantages you can pick as well. Oh, eye for detail? Oh, an eye for detail as well. Gosh, there's so many attributes, so many advantages you can take. So that's it. So you take your dark secret, 2 disadvantages, 3 advantages from there. Pick those up. When you pick up your archetype, then your attributes, then you assign those 3 passive ones first. So +2, +1, and +0. Probably ideally reflecting on the advantages and disadvantages you've picked, because you'll probably want to have quite a high number in the ones you roll for. And then assign those modifiers again to the 7 active ones as well. Yeah, charisma, coolness, intuition, perception, reason, soul, and violence. Then you have your looks. I forgot here. New age, goth, metal. Sorry. Peacockish. Oh, what a great word. Designer, bohemian, worn, or normcore clothes. Oh man, that's just me. Normcore. Facial features: haggard, cute, pretty, captivating, beautiful, aceric. Oh, I've not heard of that one. Or expressive features: eyes are easy, cheerful, crystal clear, magnetic, profound, burnt out, hypnotizing, or passionate. And then body is cute. You can have cute facial features and cute body. Agile, robust, emancipated, sexy, lanky, sensual, warped, graceful, or voluptuous. Then you get a name, and then you do. Everyone will introduce themselves by their character, looks, and personality. Write them down, and then go around again and work out the relations, which makes sense. If you know any of the characters from before, choose one of these options to establish a relationship between the 2 of you. So this is great. It gives you some examples of what you could do. You know, it's a bit like in Fiasco. Is that how do you know each other? Oh, we're we're partners, or they're my boss, etc. These are a little bit more vague, perhaps, so you can really play with them. So for the artist, you say one of the characters is involved in your art, take a +1 relation with them. One of the characters is your lover, take a +1 relationship with. Oh god, not even vital, just a +1. One of the characters has hurt you, take a 0 relationship with you. Sorry. My brain went blank then. One of the characters is infatuated with you. They take +2 relation with you. Uh-oh. Excuse me. And you've made a work of art for one of the characters. They take +1 relationship with you. So yeah, depending on how many people you have, it depends on all that as well. And I'd also say you can always make one up as well. And then on top of that, decide the nature of 3 additional relations, with one that's neutral, one that's meaningful, and one that's vital, with sort of NPCs, so non-player characters as well. Oh, I can play as Robert Jonsson, who sold his soul to the devil to play the blues. Exactly you can. You probably have to take a +2 relation with the devil, right? And that's it. That's all you need to make a character. Again, we're not going to look at the other archetypes because it's going to be the same sort of thing. Occupation. Here's some suggestions for dark secrets. Here's some suggestions for advantages and disadvantages. Assign those stats. Or what they look like, etc. And that was the thing as well. Equipment-wise, it's just up to talking to the GM of what you would like, what you think your character would have. I'm always a fan of being like, yeah, of course you'd have these things, or like, oh, I forgot, I meant to say that I would have brought my weapon into the, I don't know, the party or with me. And I was like, yeah, of course. I'm very much easygoing. I don't want to be like, I'll roll to see if you remembered to bring your pickaxe, you know. No one wants to do that rubbish. So then we've got the Avenger. So that was the Detective, the Avenger, and then the Seeker was the last one, I think, as well. Seeker. That was racing through the pages now. And then the Game Master. Let me think. Let's actually look at, you know what we should do. The Game Master, constructing a scenario and influences, and then we've got the character sheet at the end. What I'll do, I'll try and finish this because I think we've only got 26 pages left. I've been reading through quite a lot, but I think we've got a good sense of like what the game mechanics are. Be interested to see what they say about the Game Master stuff. It's probably stuff that is very straightforward, and we could always read in our own time. But definitely be interesting to see about creating a scenario because I think that could be quite interesting for us. Obviously, looking at this, there doesn't seem to be. She says, having a quick look at the thing, there doesn't seem to be a quick start scenario, which makes sense. We've talked about it. Like, it's definitely his stuff to get you up and running rather than give you a quick start one. But there are quick start. So the chapter explains how the GM leads the conversation, makes her own moves against the PC, and upholds the horror contract of the Kult stories. That's true. We should probably look at GM's hard and soft moves, right? To play Kult Divinity Lost is to carry on a conversation between players and game masters. The player's job is to primarily say what the characters say and describe what they do and how they act. They will also relay what their characters think, feel, and remember. They'll also answer questions posed by the GM about the characters and how they live. The GM's job is everything else. What every other person says in the world, what every other person in the world says and does, and what else transpires in the story world. Whenever a player character enters a new environment, the GM will describe notable details, answer any inquiries, yada yada yada. All people, creatures, and entities who aren't player characters are non-player characters. It's the GM and nobody else who can control. Excellent. When creating stories in Kult, you should be checking off 3 agenda items over and over. The rules of the game are there to help you drive towards it. Every story in Kult ought to drive towards tearing the illusion apart and to reveal the true reality behind it. Whenever the player character's inaccurate understanding of the world and what they think to believe to be true collides with violent conflicts with the dark truth, madness and horror emerges. By allowing player characters to confront reality, you also put them in the position to finally confront their own lost divinity. Roll credits! Player characters in these stories are haunted, occasionally by external elements, but often just by internal forces and conflicts which drive them towards madness, with a capital M there. It is your job to challenge the player characters and drive them towards action. In the dark, horrific tales being told in Kult, any respite is very temporary. New threats lurk behind every corner. The rules will assist you with this. Disadvantages allow to invent new threats, and dark secrets anchor the player characters to terrors in their past, and the GM moves naturally escalate danger and drama in a crescendo and eventually climax. In Kult stories, the player characters are the protagonists. It's their activities the story revolves around, whether those activities occur in the past, the current, or the future. Your job is to encourage the player characters to act, and through the use of the rules, the character actions will make an impression on the story. That's a nice way of putting it. Put obstacles in the character's paths, and then stand in support of them, discovering solutions to the situations they're in. Never say no, but yes and. Improv. And in some cases, okay, but how? That's me all the time. I think I should get that on a t-shirt. Okay, but how? When a player says she drives it. When a player character says she drives her dagger into the lictor's eye, you don't say, you can't, but her eyeball bursts with a sound like a cleaving a cherry tomato into its white goop insides trickle down Laura's face while the dagger sinks deep into the eye socket. She grabs you and lifts you up like a small child in the air. With a wicked smile playing across her lips, she whispers, "So, you want to play with me?" Amazing. I wish I had the balls to do that. Agreed. I think roles should only be used if the story moves forward. 100%. 100%. Yeah. And so this is what I was talking about before, these principles. The principles serve as the GM's guideline for running the game. Whenever she chooses or describes moves, the GM ought to remember these principles. To insinuate the supernatural. You should describe odd occurrences and weird details from time to time, which suggests that the player characters that there's something questionable about the concept of the reality they've been fed. And then they've got some examples here. What forgotten subway stop does the train drive pass between 50th and 42nd Street? You know? The true reality exists on the periphery of the player's character's awareness, ready to burst forth when the illusion tears. By suggesting a fundamental wrongness about minor details in the story, the GM can incite the sense that player character's concept of reality is falling apart and that something awful might be revealed at any moment. So this is actually something I did do on the stream. I got commented on afterwards. One thing I really love to do as a GM is, you know, I'll have really cool sort of set pieces I want to describe and I want players to be a part of, but sometimes they don't roll high enough. Or they go, actually, I don't want to be here. I want to go investigate. So they don't go to the thing. And rather than be like, oh, I'll just put the thing over there. You know, like, is that whole thing of like, there's two paths. There's one of them has the underwater dungeon, and they go, oh, we don't want to go underwater today. We want to go to the sky. You go, oh, take that underwater dungeon, put it in the sky. But this, what I like doing is that if the players turn away, or they go and do something else, I like to be like, what you didn't see. You know, that sort of, the camera, you know, in horror films, there's always camera's always fixed on a point where you, the audience, can't look away, but the characters do. So I did that in the stream on last Monday. Oh, Monday just gone, sorry. I don't work out what day it is. Where I talked about something screaming out, like, almost like in a painting, it was screaming, like trying to push its way out, but the player character didn't see it, and then a second later it was gone. And that was really cool. And I think it's really cool because that's very, for me, that's very, very horror movie-like, right? You are forced to watch something horrible that doesn't necessarily impact on you, but you know, because the player character didn't see it or because the protagonist didn't see it, that's really bad. Bad things are happening, and it's just a way to heighten up the thing. So I like this idea of, like, you know, talking about stuff and describing the details that maybe aren't connected to the story directly or directly connected to those characters either. I just really love it. By the way, I think that maybe Colin Robinson from What We Do in the Shadows might be Normal Core personified. Yes, of course. That is such a good shout as well. I think What We Do in the Shadows, obviously, it is supposed to be comedy underneath, but there's certainly Colin Robinson's story arc I find really fascinating because ultimately it's incredibly dark. And also now we've got Series 5 is finally out. Thanks to, well, obviously important that we had the strikes and everything like that, but now that it's sort of is released and out, we can talk about it a bit more. So that's really cool. So yeah, I gotta put that on the list as well. Style-wise, oh yeah, absolutely. And he's a great character as well. I think really well written and really well played. Address the characters, not the players. So actually directing, you know, like first person, actually talking to them using their names. I do struggle a little bit with this sometimes because sometimes I'm really bad at remembering names. I'm also terribly bad at pronouncing it as well. So definitely, my advice would be like, I completely agree with this, by the way. Yeah, absolutely address the characters so that the immersion is there, but do practice their names. I can't, or something that I do ask sometimes, if there's lots of fantasy names, because there's no pronunciation guides anywhere, or I really struggle with pronunciation guides. I always chicken out at the last minute. I will get the players to like put in the pronunciation into their Zoom chat. Like, you know, like we had someone was playing a character called Yayan, which it's pronounced differently to how it's spelled. So I asked them, could you actually spell it out as pronunciation so that we can all see? And it also means that, because not only is that for me, but it's also for the players as well, which is good. And also get people to correct you all the time, because that's kind of important. It also means that, yeah, you're referring to the character, not the player, when these bad things are happening to these people as well. Make moves, but base them on the fiction. So yeah, this is a proper, like, Powered by the Pockets one. So make moves based on real events rather than what transpires in the fiction. When a player character enters a new location, or otherwise transitions to a new scene, when a player misses their roll, usually by -9, when the text for a move makes... When the text for a move a player makes instructs the GM to make a move, when the player looks to the GM for input, then the GM makes a move. However, the GM should act if the reason is because of the events in the story. I think it's just, yeah. So this is it. So for example, if If the GM's move is capture someone, they should never say, since you failed your act under pressure move by sneaking into the factory, you will only make it halfway before they catch you. Instead, say, as you climb through the broken window, you drop down onto some old glass which breaks with a loud crash, and after a few seconds, it seems like you were in the clear. But as you exit out of the main hallway, you only make it a few feet before you hear footsteps behind you. 2 security guards look down the barrels of their rifles at you, and out of the rooms in front of you, yet another 2 emerge. What do you do? Yeah, I did struggle with this a little bit during the stream, is that I'm very much like, name the move to help the player and myself. But it's so true, like it feels so more immersive if you, you know, if you're like, okay, I'm going to use this move, I'm going to do this. But also at the same time, I think there's something cool about like, I'm going to use capture you in some way. Like I think vocalizing it out loud as well could be okay, but it's something that I want to, because I want to be more immersive, certainly with my horror stuff. I don't want to necessarily what moves I'm going to do. You know, I want to expand on that detail a little bit as well. I just remembered, Jacob Ladder is another cool movie to draw inspiration from this game. Absolutely, yes. Completely agree with you on that front. When the GM's move is to deal damage as established, don't say, you take damage. Instead, describe the creature's teeth sinking deep into the player's flesh. And even if you make the move turn someone's move against them, don't say, I turned your move against you. But you aim your pistol at the back of her head and she slowly raises her hand. Suddenly her elbow strikes you in the face and in a disorienting flash she's torn the gun away from you. With a wicked grin, points it towards your forehead and say, who did you say should put their hands up? Very cool. Assign motivation to all your NPCs. Yeah, that makes sense. They should be given their own straightforward emotional drives and self-interests. There's no need to get overly complicated. Assign simple and straightforward reasons for why people act the way they do. I think that's very true. Like, monsters, creatures, villains, they don't be violent for violence sake. They could do, but that's really boring as a story. It's always more delicious to have something, a reason for why they do it. And even if that reason is completely unjustified. I've literally, give your creatures their own internal logic. That's almost twinning with that last one, huh? Ask questions and build upon the answers. Yeah, very much improv. Listen, hear. I always say clarify as well. If the player's been a bit vague about something, try and narrow down the options for them. Especially if they're new to the game and they're not quite sure. You can always be like, here are your 3 options that you have. Which one would you do? Because I think sometimes it is overwhelming, like as a player. Certainly for something like this. A long one, that one. Be a fan of the player characters. Well, that's obviously a natural one, easy to do. Yeah, don't try and kill them deliberately. Think of it's their own choice. Think beyond the scene from time to time. When the GM is about to make a move, she might consider what her NPCs have been up to. Has any of them done or planned something that might become apparent right now? Is something taking place elsewhere that's deserving of the GM's attention? Oh, so you could go about meanwhile. Maybe the Death Cult is opening a portal to Inferno to release the living dead into the city whilst the player characters are busy snooping through the Mafia hideout down by the docks. When the GM makes her move, she'll describe the characters hearing sirens and helicopters in the city. Pillars of smoke rise from the downtown district. This method makes the world feel real, and by frequently recalling her threats, the GM also makes the characters' lives more interesting. That's the key thing there, making the world feel real, right? I feel like sometimes, and I know I've spoken about it before on another stream, where when you run a game, or when you create anything that's homebrew, any scenario, it's written work, right? Until it comes into contact with the players, and then it becomes a living work. It's constantly breathing, it's constantly adapting to what's happened, and we need to be okay with that as writers, as creators. You know, you'd be like, I've made this world, and then people playing it goes, that's not how the world works. Maybe you weren't clear enough, perhaps, but I think always be open to what the players are giving to you, and maybe they find something really cool in it that you hadn't considered earlier. But yeah, making the world feel real, and making it living, and being allowed to be changed by what the players do. Absolutely. The GM's moves are meant to create obstacles that the player characters can overcome during the course of the story. Unlike players, though, the GM never makes dice rolls for their moves. Fantastic. At least this isn't a fantasy game where you have to remember elves named Oh, I'm not going to pronounce that. Or something like that. A character would be named Alice. Agreed. But even then, I still get names wrong. I got one of the characters' names wrong in the stream, and it was just because it was just an unusual name that I'd spelt differently in my head. I was like, gosh darn it, you know. So when do you do it? So whenever you want to increase tension, whenever a player move dictates that you can make a move, but it says may, so you can have a choice whether you want to do it or not, or when a player action grants an opportunity for them to make a move. And how? You describe an obstacle, ask what the players do about it, and then they describe their responses, etc. So again, it carries on that conversation. So hard and soft moves, that's what we'll quickly look at. Ooh, enhance. So they're even described as soft or hard moves. The distinction is drawn between the move's impact and whether or not the player characters can prevent them or not. A soft move is a setup for a consequence that is still preventable. Hard moves are consequences crashing down on the players directly and irreversibly. Hard moves often entail that the characters are suffering harm or other afflictions or have something taken from them. Easy, straightforward. So, the different kinds of moves. We'll look at this first one, obviously, a classic, separate them, and then we'll get through them a little bit. So, in a response to a failed move, perhaps, my move might be to separate them. So I separate the player characters from each other and all their allies. So for me, examples could be, you hear the rotting floor start to give way, and behind you, Jessica emits a shriek. A gaping dark hole has opened up, and Jessica is nowhere to be seen. What do you do? Perfect. Again, all these texts, again, it's just to help you, really. It's to give you an example, but ultimately it's like, oh, capture someone. Okay, easy enough, you know. So you got capture someone, put someone in a bad spot, exchange harm for harm. Ooh. Yeah. Announce off-screen problems. I want that on a t-shirt. Announce future problems. I want that on a t-shirt. Deal damage. The GM harms the player character or someone in her vicinity. Dealing damage is always a hard move. Normally, the player would roll to endure injury, but sometimes a character affected by harm where they wouldn't be able to get out of it. In the case of harm, ought to be derived from the actions the player character has made of their own free will, not just a random hard move they would never had the opportunity to avoid. If the harm inflicted is fair, the player character will accept it. By abusing the power, the GM risks unnecessary conflict with the players and violating the principle of being a fan of the player characters. That's really interesting that that's gone into so much detail about that. I think that's so true. And it's really interesting. So it's basically like this is an incredibly hard move. You're gonna do it. It's very brutal, which I quite like as a result. Decreased stability. Sometimes player characters experience something so horrifying the GM feels there's no way they wouldn't be affected by it. In those situations, it's okay for the GM just to decrease their stability by 1, 2, or even 4 steps, rather than asking them to make it a keep it together roll. Take their stuff. I did that. I did that in the session. Somebody failed their roll, and I took their gun from them. That worked quite well as a move. Give the possible consequences and ask. GM simply informs the player of what the consequences of their character action are likely to have, giving the player opportunity to change their mind. This ensures there is no miscommunication and that the player is fully aware of the situation before committing or allows the player to double down on a risky course of action. I love this. I love this as a move, because then it is a bit like, are you sure? You know, like, do you really want to do this? You know, that sort of thing. But in a way that you lay out, like, this is what's likely to happen, is that you're going to get caught, you're going to fall and hurt yourself, and they're going to catch up to you, or you're going to face something really awful. But then it's always almost like there's it happens in Brindlewood Bay. I think it's also in The Between as well, both by the Gauntlet and Jason Cordova games in general. There's again, Powered by the Apocalypse as well, where you go, you make a move. It's like the day move or the night move, and you go, okay, you're about to make this very risky move during the day. What's the thing you're worried about that if you fail? And they'll say something like, death, this, that, the other. And then you as the facilitator has to go, oh, it's much worse than that if you fail, and describe something worse. And then they know it's nice that they set themselves, oh, it's going to be something superfluous like death or something, and then you go, oh, it's much worse than that. The way, your consequences are going to impact on other people, that somebody else will die, and suddenly that's people get really, I don't know, it's just a different way of thinking about it. So I think I'd maybe incorporate that a little bit, that they'd be like, what do you think will happen if you go do this act? And they'll be like, oh, probably this and the other, and then I'll be like, it's much worse than that. I think I'd change this move a little bit to incorporate that. Offer an opportunity with or without a price. Turn their move against them. Make a threat move. Ooh, this is it. Yeah, I've got that in the scenario, haven't I? Activate a disadvantage. Spend a hold. Now, that's another terminology I wasn't very familiar with. When a GM activates a disadvantage, she is either framing a scene in which their disadvantage is activated, or she's spending a hold she's received due to a disadvantage from one of the earlier moves. Holds from disadvantages let the GM choose freely what kind of soft or hard move she should make, but feel free to take inspiration from other moves. So a hold, from what I understand, is basically like you can have time to think about bringing whatever that move is. So say someone failed and it says, oh, the GM has one hold, and it just means like, okay, nothing bad happens just now. Say like you failed to get past a locked door. You go, oh no, well, you rolled an 8, and I go, okay, actually you do get past the door. And then later on, when they're doing something, maybe that's when security shows up, because actually they triggered a silent alarm, and armed police forces come in to get them whilst they're in the middle of doing whatever it is they're doing. So that would be an example of a hold. So it doesn't happen straight away, and the players don't know. It's just something that you can have in your back pocket as a GM, which I really like. After every move, ask, what do you do? That's what I'm about. Ah, yes, conflict resolution rules. Kult Divinity Lost does not have a distinct set of rules for handling combat or other conflicts. Every conflict is resolved using the regular player moves. Excuse me. Regardless of whether the player opts to convince or attack their opponent, resolution of the conflict is handled, no differently than any other activity. Players describe what their characters do, making the moves triggered, and the GM describes the outcome of the moves and the consequences of their actions, making her own moves as necessary, which incites responses from the players. It continues as a conversation between GM and players, where the fiction determines how much detail is necessary. So it talks about, it's going to give those two as examples, I think, yeah. So this one is an example of where it's a brawl happening, a person's going to run towards them, and they're going to do a roll under pressure. And that's one way of doing it, but also it could be like a roll to engage as well, and it just depends on what that player is saying, and it's up to the GM to decide that, which I think is really, really cool. Yeah, conflict flow, let's take a look at that quickly. The order of action between player characters and NPCs is primarily determined by the fiction. When a conflict is limited to conversation and intimidation, there's no need to formally track the order, as it will emerge naturally. During the physical conflicts, the GM might need to decide who acts next. If a player character initiated the conflict, for example due to an attack on someone else, they will be the ones to take the action first, which makes sense. If the NPC started the conflict, well then they take the action first. As the player characters trigger moves, these moves will generally generate a natural flow where opportunities to act and react jump back and forth between NPCs and players involved. There are two methods, though, available to the GM to determine which player character should act next: a fixed order or an order based on the fiction. If it doesn't matter too much the story, the GM can just go around the table in a fixed order, asking the players one at a time to describe and execute their players' actions. But rather than executing an action as it's described, it is often more flexible and cinematic to ask all the actions up front, and then determine the execution order based on what makes sense to the fiction. Ooh, I like that. Someone might be firing a pistol while another one wants to run away and take cover, and a third might want to take stock of the situation. The GM determines that the shooter acts first, since it ought to be instant. Afterwards, the person observing the situation gets to make their move, and then finally, character diving for cover and gets to roll and see how that works out. I quite like that, actually. That it's almost, I can't remember what it's called now, but there was a similar initiative order you get in D&D where you write down what you have. Oh no, it's not your initiative order. It's no, I think it's Deadlands and Savage Worlds, where it uses the cards thing. And sure, you'll go in a certain order, but you all reveal at the same time what you're doing, which I quite like. And Kult Express is the other one as well, that you don't know everyone else is moving until you reveal it at a certain point. I really, really like. I love the stream, but I really need to go. I'll catch the rest of it on the VOD and make sure to check out your RP Geeks actual play, was it? Good night. Oh, thanks so much. I appreciate you being here, Blue Sky. Yes, RP Geeks D&D on Twitch, but the VOD will be up at some point as well. But yeah, nice to see you, and thank you so much for engaging with the stream. I very much appreciate it. Let's see what else, because really I've only got another real 10 minutes because I should finish. There's some more examples there, which we don't. There's the horror contract there. So yeah, as we were saying before, know your players, quality before quantity, quality before quantity. There we go. When horrors reappear too frequently, when there are demons around every corner and everywhere you go, you run into dismembered, mutilated corpses, the story loses its edge. By overwhelming the players with a stream of horrific events one after another, they will become desensitized. It's sometimes important to hold back and apportion the horror to give the players time to recover. As an analogy, consider yourself as GM to be a coachman. The horse is horror, and it is constantly trying to dash off. Your task as a GM is to hold tightly to the reins, holding back the horror before it starts to lose its impact. Ensure the players are given time to recover, breathe, and regain a sense of control and comfort. At this point, you can start threatening them again. What a great analogy. That's awesome. Build the atmosphere, of course. It can mean choosing the right environs for unpleasant scenes. For example, a sealed-off underground subway at night or a packed cafe at lunchtime. In the subway station, the players are tense from the moment they enter the space, whereas at the cafe they feel safe. If a player spots a 5-year-old through the darkness in the subway station, she will think twice. If she spots the same girl at a cafe, she won't have a reaction whatsoever. Stay in the scene. When you notice a scene starts to get scary and effective, try to hold on to that moment. Very true. Suggest rather than overwhelm the players with sensory information. Yeah, it's much worse. The inexplicable. Oh yes, this is what I think it's called nightmare logic. It's uncomfortable to encounter something you cannot explain. When you have that gnawing feeling that something is off, even the most mundane things will appear threatening. This is frequently used in Japanese horror films where ghosts appear human but move in a strange, jerky way, or in David Lynch movies. We talked about Twin Peaks. I think that's so Aliens 3, right? The TV series where situations and locations seem familiar, but some small detail makes it apparent that something isn't right. Incite a sense of exposure. Dare to be unpleasant. I want to read this one out loud. Exposure isn't about a particular place where the player characters can experience isolation. The player character's inner life should also be afflicted. Take the players to places you don't normally want to go, where there's sensitive and difficult and disconcerting. Violence and death can easily be oversimplified in movies, games, and novels where people are shot, stabbed, and beaten to death without pause or reflection. Instead, make sure to set up distressing and unnerving moments. Got there eventually. The scenes are often tied to the intimate, family, and sex and feelings of shame, guilt, and helplessness. Have no mercy. It should be difficult, offensive, and transgressive to the player characters. Ooh. See, this was the example I saw. Read out. For example, you're held in place whilst the gangster you owe money to undoes your pants and grabs onto your cock. He strokes it almost tenderly. When do I get my money? He asks. You scroll through the web pages. Your name and picture is featured everywhere alongside that grainy security cam footage. The monster you unleashed, which looks exactly like you, is gunning people down in the mall. It's all a blur of newspaper headlines, wanted alerts, and your mother crying whilst the paparazzis get footage. You feel like you can't control your own body. The lictor's commanding voice has entangled your mind. You feel your newborn son's warm, soft skin. You lift him up, and he babbles and coos happily, unaware about what is to transpire. You start walking towards the oven. Yeah. There you go. It's pretty good. Like, that's stuff you wouldn't necessarily get in when you're playing RPGs without safety tools, without the like that for me is like a horrible experience. But ooh, it would be so cool to explore something as that sort of horror tendencies in a safe environment. Like it says here, important, discuss any sensitive subjects with the group to ensure they can be included in the story. Certain subjects will cross a boundary for certain players, as opposed to their characters. It's better to ensure the participants have the opportunity to make certain subjects off limits than to have to console them, than having to console traumatized players after the session. Very interesting monsters. Oh, there's an image. And then constructing a scenario. I think we're going to leave it there, folks, unfortunately. Just because I've run out of time. I thought we'd get through it all, but basically the last couple of bits of the quick start would be about how do we create a scenario, thinking of a scenario concept, choosing a theme, thinking of time and place, thinking of backstories, all that sort of good stuff. So it's quite cool that even in the quick start, you could easily put together a scenario for Kult that maybe you want to publish as well. Like, obviously we've seen that there are scenarios that you can get from the resources as well, which is pretty cool. What a great image. So I'm just flicking through. Influences. And here's some examples. Again, we didn't even get to this, but some of the setting stuff. So the Metropolis, the sort of archons you can have here. Some cracking imagery, by the way, if you're looking. Yeah, basically some NPCs that you can get some inspiration from, and not NPCs, but sort of from the. I think so. There's a lot here, for 56 pages. Like, we didn't even scratch the surface, huh? That's really cool. I'm just checking if there's anything else. Grim, and then there's a character sheet right at the end. And that's everything for Kult Divinity Lost. Some final thoughts. I think, ultimately, it's a straightforward system, right? I kind of wish that Quick Start talked a bit more about what stability means, what serious wounds and harm is, because there's not really much in terms of your health per se. Again, it's all about narrative stuff, but that was the thing I really struggle with. Stability, is it just to your disadvantages? Is it just to your roles, all roles, etc.? So I'm probably going to check out Seth Skorkowski's series again, just to double check on that. But thank you so much, folks, for being here. Oh, has that thing gone to sleep? No. Back to Big Fiona Cam. If you enjoyed this, thank you. I very much appreciated it, and it's really helped me sort of solidify some ideas I wanted to do for next week's RP Geeks stream. But if you are interested in getting your own version of Kult, now I think only one of these commands is going to work. Clearly doesn't work for the YouTube for some reason, but you can get it on divinitycultlost.com. You can get your own copy from the Helmsgas website, but obviously a drive-through RPG, and there's so much stuff here. Obviously I've shown all the accoutrements that I've bought, but I think ultimately this quick start is enough to get you going at least. I would suggest, if you're going to get the PDF of the core book, also get the player's guide as well, as that's easy to hand out to your players for certain character creation, and you're not going back and forth constantly, because I will say you can get a bit heady and a bit lost in that. I'd 100% recommend the reference sheet that you can download from the free resources thing for the player moves, essentially. I've got mine printed out here because it's so useful to have and just quickly reference to. And what was else I was going to say? If you found that, if you thought, oh, she's got a lot of stuff going on for her. That's very kind of you. I run What Am I Rolling? It's twice monthly RPG one-shot podcast where we look at lots of different RPG systems and run quite a few of them. I also do some interviews with game designers and other tabletop RPG experts. I've got a few coming out just now. We've got Going Rogue that's coming out just now, which was really, really fun. Basically, it is a Star Wars / Rogue One inspired what's the word? What's the system called? It's like a dreams apart, dreams askew system, essentially. And a little bit of Possum Creek games as well. On top of that, load using tokens, which is really fun. Again, that sort of conversation stuff going forward. Very emotional, I'd say. Again, your mileage may vary on that front. But we've also got, we'll be having it out around about Christmas. We're going to have the Solemn Veil audio from the stream we did with Actual Play UK a couple of months ago. That was really fun, so we'll get that out for a Christmas bonus as well. and I'll be doing more of that stuff. But if you're like, there's only one podcast to rule them all, you're right. You're right. It's excuse me. It is the DM's Book Club, which talks about some D&D lore and how we can improve it and make it better in our own campaigns. Because, well, let's face it, they've had a bit of a year. Some ups, some really bad downs, and now with the Book of Many Things delayed till the new year. But yeah, we talk about all things in related to D&D, but we try and make it in the sense of, like, both myself and my co-host Hamilton, we're very much of the mind that everyone should play any games, and we just want to make it accessible. As we sort of say at conventions, we read the books so you don't have to, which is always good. And then finally, one thing I was going to say was that if you've enjoyed this and you thought, Fiona, I'd love to talk to you more about RPGs in general, well, we've got a Discord. I've put it in the chat there. It feels like, for some reason, only Nightbot in Twitch is going off, and not in the YouTube, so I'll have to sort that out later. It's been a couple of months since I've done this last. Come join the Discord. We're a very lovely little community there, just talking about RPGs and sometimes sharing little pictures about like our days and just making sure everyone's all right and playing fun games. That's it. It's nearly 9 o'clock where I am, so I'm going to make myself a cup of tea. I'm going to relax. Maybe I'll watch something on Netflix. Maybe I'll watch a horror film or something just to keep me in the mood. Thank you so much for those people who stayed with us. I hope you have a good evening, and hopefully I'll be back soon, depending on how life goes again. I'll have a look at my list. Maybe we'll do Changeling Lost. I got noted. And thank you for those suggestions in the chat as well. I very much appreciate them. I'm going to turn it over to the end of screen. There's the button there. And I'm going to wave awkwardly until I find it. Thank you so much, guys. I'll see you next time.